Sorry, guys, had to pee.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody's Saturday going?
Good. And you?
Good, it just started.
Right. You guys could say a little prayer. Today's the day we're moving my sister-in-law out of my brother's house. So Lance, everybody's over there moving. I'm gonna head over as soon as we're done, but I know it's a rough day for her and hard to walk away and hard to move on and hard to do all the things, but it's time. So she needs so fill me in, Nancy. Give me a real quick. I miss you guys. How's everybody doing? How's your daddy doing?
Good, good. He's doing well. He went on a bike ride 4 days in a row now. So he's still having a lot of back pain, even like when he goes to water his plants. It's a little frustrating to him because he can't do anything, but riding the bike doesn't bother his back. So
That's a win. So,
yeah.
All right, ladies. I know we left off on the jump rope. Does everybody remember where we kind of left off of Dr. Bosch showing us how that jump rope kicks in? And the reason she's explaining that is how that hippocampus works and how jump rope is just so effective for it. And it's one of those, does everybody remember that, it doesn't matter how you get over the rope, you just got to go over the rope. And we've all tried the excuses. I know we kind of ran out at the end of that one, but I'm like, well, we could, when I was doing therapy and stuff and in my therapy classes with patients, they have a fake jump rope that it's just the handles and the little wiggle thing that goes around. And, a lot of people like to try to push to those. So I even tried that as a therapist. I'm like, hey, what if we just get the little, and she's like, nope, 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 nope. The rope motion needs to go over your head, step over it, whatever you need to do to get over it. The one thing I wanted to make sure I reminded you is when you buy these, even, it's like $20. I mean, they're nothing expensive, but when you first buy them, this leather is real light and real just real airy, just real light. If you soak it in some neat's foot oil, it puts some weight to it and it makes it more supple and more safe because then it goes over your head easier. You're not as likely to trip over it. It doesn't keep, flying down your back when you're jumping. So it is one of those things. And this one needs done again. I can tell, obviously, because I haven't used it for a while. But you just soak it in a can. And I'll have Lance put all this over on the Amazon storefront, the exact one that we use, and the oil that he got. And he literally just poured it in a can and he held the handles out and just lets these soak in the oil overnight. Then it gets some weight to it and it makes the leather soft on here. So it's just a little.
What's
that?
What's the kind of oil you said?
It's called Neat's Foot. It's some
Can
kind
you
of
spell it?
farmer.
Can you spell it?
Neets foot.
Okay.
It's some kind of, I don't know if it's like for horse stuff or cow.
All right.
It's some
good.
kind of farmer stuff. I don't know.
That's
I
okay. I needed to write it down.
I will I'll have Lance put it over there when he gets home tonight. Because I know there is a special oil that he used that he soaked it in, everything like that. So all right. So that was the part. The jump rope is one of those things that, again, none of us like to do it. It's not fun. It's not easy. Even being a dancer and a fitness instructor and all the things, the first time I pulled that jump rope out, I was kind of cocky and it like, I got this. I don't know how to jump rope. And I get that jump rope out and it's like, oh, holy hell, you forget how you've lost coordination and the things that have disappeared that used to be so simple. So be mindful of that. It's not a fail. It is just you've got to meet your body where it's at, and that's okay. But jump rope is one of the best, cheapest, easiest, and most effective things you can do for a healthy brain. So when you're irritated, when you're stressing, when addictions are knocking on the door, that right brain, left brain connection, anything you can do to get to stop and go jump rope for 2 minutes is just a win-win. So it's one of those tools that it's annoying. We all throw it in the cabinet and we kind of forget about it. And, it is always one of those things I always think, why don't I do that? Why don't we use these tools more often that we have access to? So this next video is her talking about the hippocampus and everything like that. So jump rope is one of the great things, but now we're working on that development of the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that we've got to grow while we have the chance, make it healthy while we have the chance, make the changes to it while we have the chance. This is one that's very near and dear to my heart of if we have any influence over children. If I could have a do-over as a parent, this is the one part I wish I could have a do-over to um, change the trajectory, I guess, because this is the part where I look at the struggles that both of my kids have now. And I look at my poor son that I fed him fruit smoothies right along with me because of his allergies and his asthma and everything. And it's like that sugar constantly in the brain. And I watch his struggles now in life as an adult, and the struggles are real. And it's like, oh, what an effect I could have had differently or done differently, or just stuff. So we'll do this. So let's get started on this one. Just know Gina will be popping in. She texts me. She's on the way home from a doctor's appointment. But she will be jumping in here. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this so we don't run over too much. This one is about 35 minutes. So if you need a tea or coffee or anything. Yep, you okay?
Which one is this? Is it
Uh,
five? Didn't we just?
5.3.
Oh, 5.3. Yeah. Okay. That's what
Yeah.
I have. We're up to. Okay.
Okay. Is everybody good with 5.2, or do we want to rewatch it? Is everybody good? Everybody good?
Good.
Okay, we'll go on 5.3. This is the hippocampus. Let me get the share going. And it's probably going to take me a minute to hit that button so you can hear it when I hit mute on my end. Share. Okay, now I gotta go to more. Share computer sound. There we go, I think. All right, that should, hopefully we got it going. So let me start.
All right, yes, so the hippocampus, again, one of my favorite parts of the brain is the hippocampus. My first few lectures inside the shelter were all based on if these kids only knew what was going on in their hippocampus. So I did the intense shelter work for 3 years, like that was the only place I was seeing patients. And so the kids were in their mid-teens. Now I have kids in their 20s coming up to me saying, "You probably don't remember me, but I look at you and the only thing I can think about is my hippocampus." I'm like, yes. As a teacher, if you can get your students to engage enough to remember a goofy word like hippocampus, you win, because they win. And, the hippocampus is something my kids will say, "I know, Mom, it's helping my hippocampus." I'm like, yes, it is. Your jump rope helped your hippocampus. All right, so let's talk about what does your hippocampus do? You're going to see me do this motion. It's taking M for mood and memory. Your hippocampus does mood and memory. Let me tell you a couple stories about how to remember that. So this woman is struggling with her memory. She is in her later years, and we are asking her to count these coins. The coins are sitting in front of her, and you scatter them on the table and say, "Mrs. Jones, will you please add up the coins on the table?" And she looks at you, and she's very, very prim, and she starts to separate out the quarters and the nickels and the dimes, and she's got them all laying out there. And then she takes the quarters, and she says, "Oh, okay, there's 4 quarters, so that's $1. And then she counts the dimes, and she gets like, okay, there's 7 dimes. That's 70 cents, okay. And then she goes to the nickels, and as she's counting the nickels, she looks back at those quarters. Okay. She counts the quarters, 4 quarters, and that's $1. And then she goes to the dimes, and then she counts the dimes, and there's 7 dimes, and that's 70 cents. And then she realizes something's wrong, and now there's a fear thing going on in her, and she just guesses. I'm like, "Oh, come on, Mrs. Jones, you can do it. Try again." And she keeps making that same mistake. How old do you think Mrs. Jones was when she realized what the value of a quarter was? When did you learn it? Yeah, primary school, maybe before that. Okay, so your brain wasn't even 6 years old is a good guess. How old do you think Mrs. Jones was when she learned the math that 25 times 4 is 100, which is equal to $1? Maybe a couple years later, maybe the same year, but primary school, right? Many years ago. So the memory, or the part of her brain that she is using to calculate what that money is not a new memory. It is an old memory. And it can be a little deceptive because, well, she's doing complicated math, she's doing equations, she knows what a quarter is, she took it and made it 25 cents, not just 25, she turned it into $1. So there's lots of parts that she did right. So it must be working, right? But she needs her hippocampus to take that 4 quarters and then just hold that in a visual space in her mind that that's $1, and then the 7 dimes are 70 cents, so now she's at $1.70. And now while she does the math for the nickels and then the pennies, she needs to keep that working memory functional. And when your hippocampus isn't working, you can't do that. So the memory associated with the hippocampus is recent memory. Have you ever had that auntie or a grandmother or a grandpa who every time you walk in the room, they start telling this horribly embarrassing story that they keep telling over and over again every time you see them? You're like, Grandpa, you did this last time, stop it, I know. And you're kind of irritated by it, like, shut up. Do you have to keep bringing this up? So why do they do that? Well, just like all the psychology things I was talking about in this course, I'm trying to evoke memory by linking it to an emotion. So before we're done, I'd like you to be ticked off, happy, sad, connected, inspired, disappointed, because each one of those emotions will link to a memory. And Grandpa, his brain's not working so well, so the memories that are the most profound are the ones that are linked to the rawest emotion. And as you walk in the door, you ping his memory. Okay? He recognizes you. Now, whether or not he can remember your name, he can remember the emotional story that either provides him joy because it embarrassed you, or maybe he was embarrassed with you. And he holds on to that with the deepest level of memory recorded, and he'll tell it again and again. But his hippocampus isn't working, so he doesn't remember that he told it to you yesterday or last week or maybe 20 minutes ago. He needs a functional hippocampus to do that. So emotion connected to hippocampus, so is memory. When you look at teenagers and watch how quickly their brains are growing and that emotion goes up and down and up and down and up and down, I like to think that during the times that they have crazy emotions, their hippocampus isn't growing. You've stunted the growth of it because, I don't know, you ate a bunch of sugar. Your hippocampus is highly dependent on the rate that you grow it. And when you study how well our hippocampus grows, not only does it lead to our mature adults who are emotionally stable and don't have those problems anymore, but it also is enhanced reasoning, taking memory and layering it on other parts of our other memories. And as we add new memories, we put them in association with things like what we do in this workshop. Taking it, connecting it to your lives, to your families, to your community, and the memories stack. So let's show my age again. Raise your hand if you do not know what the show Survivor is. Pretty good, okay. All right, Survivor, this place where we take these people and they're half naked and they put them on television and they put them in a crazy place and say, survive. And they have 2 teams, they have a competition, and if you think psychology is not played in this game, you are missing the subtext of what they're doing. You know, you can bet on who's gonna win the Survivor. You can go to Vegas and bet on it. And if you wanted to hack the winners of the Survivor show, you should measure the volume of their hippocampus. Take the MRI, go to see how long, how thick, how that windy thing is kind of hard. You got to use some good math to get that volume, but the volume of their hippocampus would decide who's the most emotionally stable and who can learn the skills the quickest. Because if you've ever watched this and you have this smoking hot chick who's half naked and she doesn't know how to start a campfire, but she has looks on her side. This happens in the workplace too. They show up, they're gorgeous. But her hippocampus is stunted in growth. So, lots of forgiveness when you got a figure like that to not know how to start a fire. In fact, every guy will try to help you learn. But if you fly off the handle and have an emotional swing, like many women do, and men, but known for it, especially in young women, who use that figure in an emotional turmoil, your forgiveness is going to fade away pretty quickly and you're going to be voted off the island. Much of like what happens in a workplace. You show up, you've got a nice presentation on the outside, but as soon as we see that your emotions are conniving and backstabbing and not stable, well, now I can guess what the size of your hippocampus is, but also your workmates are going to say, yeah, stay away from that. She is a smoking hot mess. And if she can't learn how to start the campfire the first day, there's lots of forgiveness. But if the third time I have to take time to show you how to start this stupid campfire because you can't record memory, now you got the dingy blonde word, and you ruin it for all the other women. But the hippocampus is what you should be thinking of. And when I tell this story to teenagers, of course, they're figuring out how to take those teenage emotional hormones and how does it translate into the workplace. And if they happen to have models of behavior that here's what an emotional stability looks like, here's how you navigate stress, great. But if they happen to have a drug addict that they're imprinting behavior on, then they start to use behaviors that they think are normal and they imprint them. And they use those in their own lives. So when you look at Survivor, place your bets on hippocampus. But let's study some other places where we know size matters. Yes, the longer and thicker your hippocampus, the better you're going to learn a new skill. And if you look at somebody whose emotional development is incredibly advanced, Michael Jordan is a tough one to beat. Not only does his brain, has been scanned, has been looked at, the volume of his hippocampus is known, and he has an incredibly large volume of hippocampus. His success also is easy to see. And if you watch, you shouldn't be able to learn the advanced athletic skills, a new skill at the age he was at, but you watch his career and he could. Let's just use his example a little bit longer. I use this for coaches out there to say, take these stories and tell them to your athletes. When you watch what Michael Jordan's success was about, yes, we all know about he had a disappointment in his teenage years. He was not given the team. That failure probably motivated at a perfect age the drive to be competitive. That's actually well played by the gods of basketball. But he also perfected a skill of a left-handed hook shot. So he could take a left-handed hook shot and make it, and this was one of those core skills that really got him onto a college team. I know he was before the dunk and like all these other things were great and his tongue goes out, but one of his core motor skills was a left-handed hook shot. And do you raise your hand if you think he made the left-handed hook shot the first time he tried it? No, he failed. But if you watch what his brain wired, and I'm going to pull this out just a little bit. So if you remember yesterday, this was our picture of a functional MRI. And when you look at your hippocampus, it kind of lies right in here. And this is your prefrontal cortex. This is the place where, the kind of box where Michael Jordan would store his left-handed hook shot. And the box is empty before he ever tries the skill. There's no storage, there's no memory. But the first time he does the skill, it's a new memory. It's going to ping off of his hippocampus. And even if he misses it, he stores the information in that part in the front of his brain. And he does it again, and he does it again. And he's known for how much he practiced that finally the bucket of left-handed hook shot is so well wired that there is a blindfolded video of him dribbling the ball down the court, making a left-handed hook shot. And he used only his prefrontal cortex. He didn't use his eyes. He didn't use he had the other sensory parts of his brain offline. That's a well-wired brain. The other part, the emotion that Michael Jordan has a stronghold on, was When you watch in the height of the moments where his team was about to make the final shots, or they're in the playoffs and it's down to the last minute, it's like nothing else in the room was going on. His ability to regulate that emotion is so advanced that he can dismiss everything else and stay right there in the moment. So based on the BDNF stuff that we talked about yesterday, what do you think about Michael Jordan's life gave him that advantage? Audience participation, what do you think? Sleep? Stable childhood, absolutely one of the most important things I point out. His parents weren't sleeping with the neighbors. Dad didn't end up in jail. Mom wasn't a drug addict. They had the same house for a year, for most of his memory. And you look at the things that disrupt a child, moving actually is as disruptive as a divorce. You're like, what? Like, yeah, you file things in a way from a child's point of view. Stability is very important. The rules at his house, where this was bedtime, this is wake up time, here's what our family does, they weren't exciting. In fact, they were kind of boring. They didn't have the fancy vacations. They just did life. They were stable. And it turns out that was really advantageous, as it is for anybody. When I look at the kids that are saying, we take our kids to Timbuktu and we drive them all over the country and we are on this advanced team that we spend $30,000 a year and my kid's 5. Like, what? That brain is so fast in its development. What are you doing? Slow down, sit still, don't. And the power of the wiring that was happening he had some other goofy things, like apparently breastfed till he was like 8, but I don't think that has anything to do with his, it was stable, but it was boring. It wasn't exciting. They weren't the sexiest team in the town for doing all those crazy things with their kids. But his brain is very well developed. And when you look at one of these, so I use that slide in teenagers because the subtext is real and I have their attention. Again, I'm trying to evoke emotion. So when I walk in and I'm in a white coat and I talk about hippocampus and how it predicts success, and I say, who wants to be the smartest person in the room? Who wants the best life? And you have teenagers that raise their hand like, sure, I want that. And I say, well, it's dependent on this thing called your hippocampus. And then I say, who do you think has a bigger hippocampus, you or me? And then I play the word a little bit better. I'm like, let's just try again. Who has a better hippocampus, you or me? And of course, the teenagers by now, they kind of get a little downhearted and they say, okay, you're a doctor, you've got it. I'm like, actually, you do. The teenager has the better hippocampus. And the reason? His is still growing. It's going to grow until the age of 24, 25, 26. And the rate of growth in length is dependent on how well they grow their brain in those teenage years. That mine's grown. I can fill in some problems with my hippocampus, but the length of my hippocampus is set in stone. It's as long as it will ever get. And the damage I did to it as a teenager, because I didn't know this stuff, I was probably anemic. Unbelievable what it could have done for the growth of the certain parts of the brain that are very predictive for my elderly patients when they come in and say, am I going to have Alzheimer's? I'm like, well, let's talk about your teenage years. I'm like, what? No, really, I want to know, how big is your hippocampus? Depression, head injuries, and low BDNF shrink your hippocampus. True. You heard me talk yesterday about how when I was in medical school, they changed the books that said, yep, you can actually regrow some of your brain. One of the areas that you can regrow is the hippocampus. It was the part that has the stem cell-like cells. And that story I told you about fibromyalgia, where we were able to do MRIs at this time. This was, again, one of those fronts of medicine that it was fun to watch, and I was glad I didn't have to make any decisions, because so much information was coming in. I don't know how the doctors managed to say, oh, we better course correct that. It's not the truth anymore. And how do you say, I know last week we said this, but now we're saying that. And it's kind of how fast things were changing when we learned about brains through an MRI. So this picture over here shows a cross-section of their hippocampus, right there, and they kind of blew them up here. This is what a hippocampus looks like. And that's what it should be as normal. When you looked at what happened when a patient came in with 12 weeks, that's 3 months, of mild to moderate depression. And I kept thinking, where did they find these people? They don't come in with mild to moderate depression. Every 400 plus people came into my clinic in my first year of practice. It was in the 400s before I had one that wasn't depressed. And I keep wondering, was she just lying to make me feel better? And they were advanced depression. It wasn't mild to moderate. These symptoms were like, no, doc, it's been going on for years. Who finds them at 12 weeks? But at 12 weeks, when they did the scans, they said, yep, look, their hippocampus is flat. See that? It's all squished. And the volume in the hippocampus was nothing like Michael Jordan's. It was small. And it was these people that had the fibromyalgia. You know, you pinch their thumb and their brain blew up on that functional MRI. They come in, they can't keep their eyes open, they're super tired, and they have pain everywhere. It's so annoying. I can't even sort out how to take care of you. You have so many problems. And when they looked at their brains, oh, it's their hippocampus that was small. So they said, well, maybe when you get to the advanced levels of fibromyalgia, they have these flat, almost absent hippocampi because they were born that way? No, that was one theory, though. They were born with defective cells in their hippocampus. No, that wasn't it either. They shrunk because they weren't sleeping. That theory's still around. That actually exists. That's got some truth to it. But their hippocampus was atrophied. Something was wrong with it. You take them to autopsy, which wasn't a lot of people, but enough of them to say, well, the cells are still there. They're really goofy-looking cells by now, though. So then you would get to see in the literature saying, well, is it because they've lost their cytoplasm? Is it because they don't talk to each other? Is it because she's not using them? Why are they so deteriorated? And then we started to see that some people, the rare person, could return their hippocampus back up to this size. And it correlated to their fibromyalgia getting better. I'm like, wait a minute, how'd you do that? I have a bucket of these patients. I don't know what to do with them. And so then there was lots of theories. It must be genetics. It must be, okay. And the truth was very much related to BDNF. And the atrophy of the hippocampus was associated with depression, but it was also associated with energy, focus, IQ, brain fog, and pain. Turns out the pain is highly linked to your emotions. And if you've done any reading between epigenetics and pain and how the mindset of how you approach pain is about your emotional state, it isn't think your way into less pain. It really is think correctly and you'll have less pain. But that's hard to tell a patient who's suffering in pain and can't think that the sun even gets up anymore. We were able to see that some hippocampus returned to normal, and we can use this word called regrowth. The regrowth is that the BDNF would stimulate the cells to make another cell from a cell, the stem cell effect that I was talking about yesterday. And your brain will do that, especially if you're a teenager who has an injury. So the person yesterday said, I have a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old who's had a brain injury. I'm like, hang tight, make sure they have high BDNF. Oh, you're the mom? Bedtimes need to be a stable routine. No electronics in the bedroom. If you haven't watched the video of the checklist that I swear it's much easier to deliver through YouTube because it's a strict set of rules. You stimulate light into those eyeballs and it wakes up your brain, and it has for thousands of years. And so if you use a clock or a phone or a screen of any sort and you want me to repair your brain, you're on a different team. The repair team says no light for 2 hours before bed. Good luck with that. All right, so I'm going to do some audience participation. So the people in the front row, I'm going to ask you, what do you see when you look up at this? What's wrong with that brain? Right, there's a big hole in it. Just to see if, what side, do you think it's the front of the brain or the back of the brain? Front, by the eyeballs, right? You think it's the right side of the brain or the left side of the brain? Right side of the brain, very good. So this patient has a head injury. And when I was struggling to teach about hippocampus, I stumbled across the fact that there is a ton of funding in the United States of America to teach about concussions and head injury. So we are going to use this because the kids know about this. So just so if you haven't been to one of these courses, like every parent seems to have to have gone to if you want your kids to go out for baseball or wrestling, this is called a concussion, and when the baseball hits the head, it injures this side of the brain where this red is, but there's also this little shadowy problem where the brain squishes to the other side and it hits that one too. We call it coup and contra coup of injuries, but the brain is a squishy little jello-y thing inside, and even though if you go to you can feel them in different science experiments, it's not that hard. In real life, it's much more squishy. This part, I would like every coach to record memory of what I'm about to do, because I don't care if you're the Sunday school teacher or the baseball coach, I want you to do this. So in this room, if you've had a concussion, please stand up. All right. So you get to sit down when you tell me a symptom of your concussion. Headaches. You can have a seat. You can't copy what somebody else has said. Throwing up. Confusion. Sensitive to light, absolutely. What else were you sensitive to? Certain foods were awful smelling, so smells. Very good. So what does it feel like to be dehydrated, though? Oh, you want to sleep. You're tired. Maybe you said tired and I heard dehydrated. Sounds were very annoying, so sensitivity to sound. So sound, smell, and light. Very good. Yeah, focus. Vision is bad, so focus. And so blurred vision. Oh, you had a metal taste or a strange taste? Yes. Very good. Loss of memory, yes. Memory is terrible. Okay. Say it again. It's a lot of symptoms. Dizzy. Very good. Very good. Okay. All right. So now the rest of you, it's hard to see. Everybody's sitting down, right? The rest of you, I want you to pretend you're a coach, and you've just had your student, your athlete, bonked in the head, and I'm the team doctor. And without using any of these symptoms, tell me things that you've seen in somebody or that you know of in somebody that when they've had a concussion, you're like, I think we're in trouble. Somebody should call the doctor. Eyes, their eyeballs do something strange, right? Eyes equal pupils are strange. Yes, they are clumsy. Oh, they've slurred speech, absolutely. Say it again? Yes, crabby. I'm going to change markers here. Irritable. They're confused. Like, dude, you're like the captain. Why don't you understand the rules of the game? Emotional. They're crying. This is not normal. What's going on here? They're probably a teenager. Okay, pretty good. They ever pass out? Okay, blackout. That's probably a good time to call. Maybe a little bit before that. All right, we're going to come back to this. So I'm going to pull this to the side, and coaches wait for the punchline. So if you look, our stories of injuries, this is one of my favorites. This mom brings in her son, who was 12 at the time, turning 13. And she shares that this is my third son. I get that this is a tough age when they go from this puberty to getting into those middle teenage years, but I really think something's wrong. Like, I've gone to the middle school 6 times in the last 10 weeks, because as soon as he starts to cry, he can't stop. I go to the school, I comfort him. As soon as I get him calmed down, he goes back to school and he's fine for the rest of the day. This is my kid who does homework when I don't tell him to. He's the guy who has won a spelling bee. He loves this stuff. But he does not have the grades to show it this semester. Something's wrong. And I said, okay, well, what have you done? The list of physicians she's been to is embarrassing. Like, she went to the primary care, and she went to the neurologist, and she went to the psychologist, and she went to the exorcist. I mean, she was like everything a mom could think of. Like, what happened to my kid? There's something wrong. I'm looking at all the documents, and boy, they've CAT scanned, and they've done MRIs, and they've done everything. I'm like, well, I don't know. I think you got to look at the brain in a different way, because you really have done EEGs, all this stuff. Yes, there's some things, but he's a teenager and his brain's growing, so they have all this loose stuff. Nobody can really put their finger on it. So mom and dad head to California to get a SPECT scan, because you can't do those in South Dakota. And as the doctor walks in to deliver this news, this is his brain. And it's easy to see that there's a slice missing right behind the left eye. But don't miss that there's this at the back of the head. And the doctor says, I think he's had a head injury. At which point the dad says, well, I am the coach of the football team.
I'm going to try to back that up. But this is another one that if you want to take a
And
picture of this, it's pretty impactful.
But don't miss that there's this.
Hang on, I'll get the
Back
words
there.
on the screen for you.
And the doctor says, I think he's had a head injury.
Check out the word mild.
At which
that.
point the dad says,
There you go. Mild head trauma, right? Just scary. So if you want to take a picture of that, I'll give you a second.
well, I am the coach of the football team, and excuse the language, but he says, we don't raise pussies in my family. Tackle football is what we do at 12 years old. And instantly I'm mad, like, at the expense of what? And like, I'm all about football. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm very much about the game. But there's a time and a stage for things about why is football such an awesome sport of creating a tribe of men to do things together, to support one another, not at the expense of a 12-year-old missing out his hippocampus. What does the hippocampus do again? Mood and memory, right. He cannot put down a new memory. He is failing every class, and he was an A student last year. As soon as his emotions start off on a spiral, up and down it goes. So they send him back to my clinic and say, okay, fix him. And the dad says, well, he has a mild concussion. And I'm like, there's nothing mild about missing a slice of his brain. I get that his symptoms were less, and now they're more, or they are more important to you now. But what we have to do is repair this 13-year-old brain. And as crabby as I was at the beginning, Dad really did step it up. Dad was the leader of the family at this point and did say, if you don't want him in your basement at 30, here's the rules. You got a smart kid, you've got it incredibly motivated, but he has a brain injury. And the lucky part for you is it was normal before all this. So I'm pretty sure his wires are still connected, and he's got the most rapidly growing hippocampus of his whole life. We can fix this, but it isn't a prescription. It starts with a bedtime. It starts with some rules. I'm going to teach you about a ketone and how much fat tastes better. You're going to get rid of the carbs. And it doesn't have to be forever, but it does need to be until his brain is functioning. And one of the most powerful parts of our symptom history that we followed was he needed to tell us when the pain stopped, and he could point to the day. Like, oh, it stopped hurting. We're 6 months into a story. The kid had pain for 6 months. Very good teaching for me to say, oh, look what you can do if you slow down and get the right diagnosis, and then you teach the family, here's the rules. So the sleep after the concussion isn't right like now, but it is in the 6 weeks following concussion, that 10 hours of sleep that are required for brain repair, for teenage brains to start growing again. Yeah, and I would advise parents, you cannot force a brain to go to sleep, but you can force them to wake up. So if you're looking, wow, they won't go to bed till 10, they're missing 2 hours of school, it's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. You're teaching a pattern of behavior that you're gonna have to deal with later. The brain injury is important. Put him to bed at 7. Oh, he's not tired then? Get him up at 7, get him up at 6. Go for a walk with him, be in their life. Do not accept that, I gotta get to work. Like, keep working. You're the parent. There's the rules. The daylight hours, they should be awake. The nighttime hours, they should be sleeping. And the pattern of that consistency is, are you making BDNF? Here's some ways to know. Does he wake up without an alarm? Does he feel rested before he goes? How is the emotions? Electronics probably need to be off for you too, your imprinting behavior. This dad did all of those things, and they had a great outcome. So let's go back to this one over here. This is an injury that was over 7 years old and was from a car accident from the driver's side. And if you remember that smell thing I drew on the board yesterday, his symptoms of why he ended up with a very expensive scan in the middle of nowhere was because he couldn't smell. He's like, I have had every procedure known to the sniffer. I have had every allergy test known, but I can't smell. And it turns out it had nothing to do with his sinuses or the allergies. It had to do with the fact that the brain cells that record smell are not turned on. You know, it's been 7 years since they've been turned on. I fell off of a scaffolding 25 years ago. Doc, I fell on my back, didn't break anything, but I was out for a while. Didn't break anything, huh? Nope. But I have this problem. I can't seem to balance. I'm like, when did that start? I don't know, been going on for probably 20 years. Like you say. All right, let's do the next question.
Okay. I don't know why. It makes me want that video right there is enough. It makes me want to cry, makes me want to do over with my kids, just all of it. But I think there's so much to learn in that one that I don't know, from connecting the emotions, when we talk about the addictions in the brain, when we're going through keto continuum and we're saying, okay, I can't give this up, or this is really hard, or why do I always fall back onto my habits? When you turn that back around and you look at the brain health in it, I think this explains so much of why. And that is why, even at the beginning of the lesson, when we start saying, figure out your why are you here? If you do not connect that emotional connection to why we're doing this, that is how it makes it so hard to succeed. If you cannot connect that emotion in that hippocampus with a direct step of, here's why addiction is hard. Because every time life punches us in the gut, it is so easy to turn back to those addictions that we turn back to our whole lives. You look at decades of that neuro imprinting on, my coping skill was a Pop-Tart and a bowl of cereal, period. I mean, that was what I learned how to do, and I did it well. So at the end of a stressful day, a bowl of cereal made me feel good. It's not the damn bowl of cereal. It's learning that connection and that calm down and doing that. So refocusing that addiction. Doesn't matter if that's sex, drugs, rock and roll, or carbs and sugar. The addiction in the brain, we have got to refocus that connection to an emotional connection. Does that make sense of why the addiction and why life gets rough? And that's when we all struggle. That's when we all fall. That's when we all turn back to what used to serve us. Fixing that hippocampus, fixing that moving forward is why it's so important to work through, connect the emotions to it. And I know going through the course the first couple times of Keto Continuum, I remember being kind of not pissy about it, but annoyed of, Why do you mean I got to connect an emotion to it? What the heck does that have to do with anything? I'm trying to stop eating cereal and you're telling me I need to get emotional. And it was kind of like, now it makes sense when you bring all those pieces together of, okay, we can do this. So, all right, get your 5.0 paper out. If you have it. If you don't, I will read through it for you. The first lesson in it is the rules of the jump rope. I will try, I may have to ask for help on this one. I know I have this in a Google Doc. I will put it over into our brains course so you can print that off if you want to again too. But let's just go down through the questions for the hippocampus that she's talking about. So again, we want to figure out the false answer, not the correct one. Hang on, somebody's in my driveway. Thank you. Right. Just more deliveries. As it's raining again today. Okay. Hippocampus files new memories and helps us regulate emotions. True or false? That's a true. Come on in, on mic, guys, come in. The hippocampus grows fastest in the womb and again from puberty to 25 years old. True or false?
True.
True.
Say that again?
Yep. True. Depression, head injuries, and low BDNF shrink the hippocampus.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
Again, how many of us go through seasons of life that, I know I was depressed for years. As a child, the trauma that I grew up in, I know I was depressed. And you look back at these things now of, golly dang, to have a do-over. The size of your hippocampus, this is one that hits home as a mama, as an influencer over children in any capacity. The size of the hippocampus predicts your future success in life. Longer and healthier relationships, greater intelligence, greater resilience. That one is just, I think, as a parent, as anybody with influence over kids, this is the one that you can't stress enough of how much influence you have over a children's development right now, which is in a direct effect of their future, of how well they're going to carry a job, how well they're going to relate, how well are they going to, I look at my son and I don't mean to pick on Adam. He's just my man child. He was sick as a baby. I babied him up one side and down the other. Just all the things that we did that it was like, gosh, if I could have a do-over. It's summertime. You don't have to go to bed early. It's all right. Go play. Go burn off some damn energy because the kid had more energy than I knew what to do with. Just stuff that I did out of love, thinking it was being caring and loving and graceful for a kid's life. And I look at the things that I did not serve him well at all. It's just, I look at my daughter, my daughter's coping skill is alcohol. And it's her fun, it's her release, it's her, I can't say she's an alcoholic, but she likes her alcohol. And it's one of those I look back at, it was fun. Her emotional connection to alcohol that's her fun. It is her make me feel good, make me feel good at the end of a day or whatever. So those kind of things, it is a direct effect. And this is one of those, again, getting, like she said, learning what fat tastes like, just having a bedtime, all those kind of things are what develops that hippocampus. And, Dr. Boz tells that story of 7 o'clock at night, her boys went to bed. And I'm like, oh my gosh. In the summertime, we had the Kool-Aid house that everybody hung out at, that I'd have kids at my house all hours of the day and night because I wanted my kids to have their friends over. I wanted to be that house where I knew what was going on. But again, I did not serve them their growth and their development by letting them stay up till midnight. I thought I'm being the fun mom, no harm, no foul. They're being, innocent fun under my roof. I know what's going on. I know what's not going on. And no harm, no foul if they're watching movies till midnight or playing Xbox or whatever they were doing. And it's like, I look back now and it's like, oh my gosh, what I should have done. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Okay, once your hippocampus shrinks, it can't be returned to its normal size. True or false?
False.
False, right. That is the one that, again, it may be slower. It may not have the effect that it does during those growing years, but there is hope. That's where the stem cell regeneration stuff comes in. That's where, again, that jump rope, the sleep, all the things come into play of we do have hope, getting ketones in circulation. It's, again, it's not a miracle cure. It's not this is going to make everything perfect, but there is a chance. It is the best chance that I believe to be able to turn things around. Those of us that grew up with traumatic childhoods, we got lots of work we can do. Stuff that we can turn around now. First of all, to prevent it from carrying it on to the next generation, but second of all, to help our heart heal, to help our body heal, to help our brain grow and come out of that trauma situation. I think some of us get stuck in our trauma and you lose so much time, energy, feelings, relationships, everything because of the trauma that we grew up in. And learning that we can heal that emotional connection of that mood and memory and break it by doing some of these things. That's huge to our brain. That's huge to our future, even as grown adults. It's just neat. Okay. Next thing, let's go to what is it? I love the Michael Jordan story. Just how cool that kid could take it blindfolded and take a left-hand hook shot or whatever and be able to do that, imprinting on that memory, imprinting on his brain. That is why those people, I think the other one that always fascinates me is a piano player, that memory that they can play with 10 different fingers on 10 different notes and 2 feet at the same time. I'm like, good God, I can't walk up and down steps without looking like a dork. I can't imagine being able to 10 fingers and 10 or 2 feet going differently. Those kind of things, that's that neural pathway that we're imprinting on the brain. And that's huge. That's not an easy thing to do, but reprinting that over and over and over. That again, why showing up for community in these courses? That is why this is where the benefit happens. That is why the classes and the Zoom calls that we all get annoyed with and have better things to do. But that is why showing up with that on a repetitive basis is what's going to imprint your brain for you to succeed the most. That's how we all grow and learn and change. We're not just wanting to learn the behavior that we need to do to get healthy. We need to change the lifestyle to make it happen. It's all easy to watch it. I could watch videos all dang day, but if I don't learn how to walk away and go implement it into my life and make a change and build a new neural pathway in my brain, I'm never going to succeed long term. It's never going to be easy to walk into a restaurant and order the meat, tell them not to bring the bread to my table, add the fat, and drink club soda. That's not easy until you do it quite a few times. Now it's so simple. We walk in, it's like, don't bring the bread to the table. Thank you. No, thank you. Bring me 2 ribeyes, 2 Caesar salads, and 2 club sodas. Don't ask me about anything else. That's what I want. That's all I need. Thank you. We don't mean it offensive, but I don't need teased with, oh, do you want to see the dessert tray? Nope, don't want to see it. Don't care to. And now that we've done that for so many years, that is now easy. We went out to eat last night. We got a minute away. We were dog tired and everything, but you know what? It was so nice to just walk in and sit down and say, Lance just takes over. I sit back. He's like, give us 2 ribeyes, 2 Caesar salads, and 2 club sodas. Cut and dry. It's easy. It wasn't easy before. You can't, to walk into Longhorn or Roadhouse or one of them that bring you that nice, soft, yummy bread to the table and tell them not to bring any. It's heart-wrenching at first. Like I thought I was going to cry the first time I walked in and said, don't bring the bread, kind of thing. But that's the neural pathway in the brain. I know we can laugh about it and it's funny how much we relate to that, but building that new neural pathway in the brain, it's not even a second thought now. Now I enjoy sitting down. It's about, okay, we've had a month from hell and we got to go sit down and eat a meal last night. It was too late outside our eating window, but you know what? It was easy when we decided that. That's building that neural pathway in the brain. So, hang on, let me go down through my notes. 5-year-old Michael Jordan with a stable family. How many of you can relate to that? Do you know anybody in your life that you can see the difference of what a stable family did and a traumatic family did? I always use the examples of Lance's family and my family, and it's like we're the perfect teaching moment for this because I grew up in nothing but trauma childhood. And Lance's was the perfect bedtime. Mom was a teacher, structure, routine. When she talks about taking the kids around the country and going to this and that was me. I did that as a mom. My daughter was a competitive dancer. We went from New York to Florida and back and forth across the country all the time for competition. My son played hockey. It was just exactly what she explained. We were busy all the time. We were on the run. I was thought I was giving them the joys and the pep talks and the, you guys got this, go follow your dreams, go whatever. You know, my daughter went to New York and danced and everything, but she got there and she hated it. We're from a small town and all she wanted to do was she worked her whole life to get to New York to be able to go dance. She won scholarships. It was beautiful. I'm thinking, go live your dream, baby girl. She got to New York and hated it because here she's the big fish in a little ocean. She got to New York and she's like, Mom, nobody even talks to you. Nobody says hi. There was no emotional connection. I look at it now. She's like, you're just a number, Mom. She's like, we're standing at the Statue of Liberty and you can't even look next to you and say, oh my gosh, look at that. You know, I mean, it was just the emotional connection. And I hear the words now and the things that I did. But when she's talking about being the family in the chaos, even though my kids were in love and, you know, we loved them and everything like that, I did not give them the structure that they needed. You know, it was like we'd come home at 3 o'clock in the morning from a dance competition. They'd get up at 7 to go to school. They're okay. We'll be good. They'll be fine. No, 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 no. Lance's family, on the other hand, his mom was a school teacher. They had bedtime. They had routine. They lived. Lance has never been anywhere. I mean, I've taken my kids out of the country. We went, you know, traveled the Caribbean, all kinds of things I did with my kids, thinking I build memories with them. Yes, built some perfect memories with them that I would never give up. But yet, the rest of the time should have been structured, should have been more routine, should have been more things I could have helped the brain development in my kids. Lance's family is very boring, very stable. Just a beautiful, structured family, no abuse, no neglect, none of the ugly trauma stuff that I grew up with. And you can, every one of his nieces, nephews, sisters, they're all 4.0 plus students. They're all amazing workers. They're all amazing students. They're all amazing, just good relationships. There's not a lot of divorces and everything else going on. And just, it is amazing. It is night and day difference. And it was just one or two people, I would think nothing of it. But when you see the conglomeration of the whole family had this, the whole family, the structure, they come from such a beautiful family. And I look at it with us, and it's like our side is just a hot mess of here's my side over here of a hot mess, and Lance's side over here of what a beautiful family. And you can see everything Dr. Boz teaches on. You see the difference of the two. It's the perfect examples of how extreme examples it happens, and it is so true in so many levels. So I don't know, it's just one of those that really hit me. The mental stability, teachers and coaches, again, this is one of those, if you don't have, you know, if you don't have children, you're not influenced over your children, or your children are grown like mine, even having influence, whether it's Bible study, whether you babysit, whether you're, you know, just anything like that, to know, encourage the young mamas, you know, the mamas that you do have an influence over, you know, have Bible study with or whatever, helping them understand the importance of bedtime routines, no sleeping in the dark, stability, fathers in the home, spiritual journeys, taking them to church, giving them a higher power to believe in. All of those things matter in the brain development that you're going through. Anybody have any notes or any questions on that part on 5 that I didn't cover? Is there anybody can think of anything?
Nope.
Okay, let me go through all my notes, make sure I'm catching Michael Jordan, rules and stability being boring, pain linked to emotions. How many of us know fibromyalgia people that have the pain all the time? That's a sad one. Symptoms of confusion or a concussion. When she went through those symptoms, that was another one that really hit home, of a concussion, because later on when we get down the further in the modules, you're going to realize all those symptoms that she said is a concussion is the same as a hangover, and is also the same as a carbon sugar binge. So all of that, it's swelling of the brain is the, you know, underlying factor on that. And when you say, I don't care if you're swelled the brain up because you had a concussion, or if you swelled the brain up because you had a bottle of wine last night, or if you swelled the brain up because you ate a big old pie by yourself and you got too much glucose in the brain, they all swell the brain up. And when you see the connection of all of that, it's like, wow, you have so much more control than you realize. You really do. And I don't know, those things kind of just hit my heart on those. Bedtime, no lights 2 hours before bed. How many of us are guilty? I go to bed and sit and read Right? I was thinking of you, Gina, when I seen that. I'm like, yeah.
I don't even know, how do you do that? Like, what do you do? How do you even do that? I mean,
I
you
will,
just sit in a chair in the dark? I
well,
mean, everything is,
everything is lit and electronic. I will tell you one of the things that whole
yeah.
first summer when I first started trying to get through this and I was coming off the Oxycontin and I was withdrawing from everything and I just struggled. It was about a year of trying to fix all these things because it was, information overload and rework our life, our family, our home life. We have a fireplace up here that we don't use. I'll send you guys show you a picture of it. We don't use it as a wood burner in our in the upstairs. We use the downstairs one for wood burning in the winter. So I put candles all in it and it became part of our evening ritual of I buy the big round candles that are this tall and they burn for hours and hours and I literally it just became our nice calm down relaxing part of the evening of I would light the candles all over my house, all in my fireplace, and it just became that calm, peaceful. It was weird. It's like it took a whole different routine of instead of just laying and watching TV and having all the lights on in the house and everything like that, we lit the candles. And again, it was trying to shut my brain down before midnight to do it. And just stupid things like that, that covering up the alarm clocks, undoing the lights out in the living room. And we would sit down and that's when we would either do our Bible study or we got these books that we did as partners that we did back and forth of, how was your week going? How did you perceive this? Is there any place I hurt you? Just it's question and answer book. So for a while we did little seasons of those kind of things. But other times, in the summer we would get out and go on a boat or whatever to kind of kill that time at night. But in the wintertime, it was light the candles and just relax and learn to enjoy company and conversation and not having to be entertained by a screen all the time because I never realized I don't go pee without my phone. I mean, every move we make is attached to some kind of electronic and it's an adjustment. It's hard. It's just not easy to do, but making the steps where you can, coming in and thinking of, okay, I can't give this up, but I can do this. And it's not going to go all at one time. I still sleep with these stupid headphones. I still need noise at night. It's a transition. I've been able to get the lights out of my bedroom. I've been able to cover the alarm clock and put the phone in the drawer and all of that, but I'm still listening to stuff. So it's a progress of if I take the noise out of my ears, I wake up instantly. So it's a step, it's a process, but it's not easy to do. So it's one of those you take it one step at a time as you can handle it. It took me probably 3 months of being able to shut the bedroom all in dark and we put blackout blinds and blackout curtains and everything on. That freaked me out. Just to have that room totally black, it totally freaked me out. It was really rough I had to work through all the emotional connections of being scared to death in the middle of the night. My dad would pull me out of bed to watch him beat my mom, and it was like, I hate the dark. I hate the dark. I mean, I can, as long as there's a night light that I can kind of see what's coming, see the shadows and, the shapes of the room. I don't need full lights on, but I needed a night light. I needed to be able to get up and walk to the bathroom without being in the pitch black. So every room in my house has a light on in it somewhere. And it was just learning to erase that and turn all that off was really hard. And I still struggle. You could see when I start to struggle is everything will kind of turn back on. And I eventually creep back to having lights everywhere. And it's like, all right, I need to do a refresh, darken up the bedroom again and get it going. And it's a process. But I can tell you, I do sleep so much better. My emotions are better. My ketones stay better. Everything when you get that BDNF in the sleep. And it all starts to tie together. And you will understand where the brain work comes into play with the rest of the keto continuum of what you're trying to do. So, what else? Stroke, I don't see you. Michael Jordan. All right. I think that is all of my notes for 5. Any questions on 5 that we're not sure? Anything that I missed on 5? Before we, oh, hang on, I lost you guys. Where'd you go? Too many screens open up at one time. Let's go. You guys ready to go on? You okay to go on to 6? Let's keep going one more. Let's see how it goes. Where is my stuff? Oop, can't find anything. I think the monsoon season has tapped our internet and everything. Like our computers are running slow, internet's moving slow. Everything. Hey, guys, on a good note, we got gutters, downspouts, and roof on. Thank you, Jesus.
Awesome.
It is no longer raining in my kitchen. We have a hot mess of everything else around, but all right. Okay, this one's only 17 minutes. So let's kick on. We are in module 6.2. All right, let's share. Got this, share. Make it big so you can see it. Everybody see the screen okay? Hang on, the circle of death is going.
So let me just
There we
tackle a
go.
couple of questions that from the break that I don't know are coming in the script, so I want to just cover them really quick. One of them is, are you sure you need carbs if you're going to do an advanced athlete? If you're going to like be a college athlete? And I would just encourage you to look at some of the highest performing athletes in our country. Their physicians and their team physicians go to the same conferences that I go to learn about metabolism, repair of the body, and advanced performance. And from the marathon runners to the 100-mile runners to the NFL teams to the NBA teams that have adapted the ketogenic diet, they are outperforming other athletes in spades. All the winter markets from the last 4 years of the advanced ultra athletes, you do not make the winner board if you are a carb-fueled system. If you are a keto-fueled system, you make the winner's board. So they said, well, don't you need those carbs to like perform well? I'm like, when you train, do it in a ketogenic state. Your body's ability to use fat is a skill set that gets stronger and more powerful the more hours practiced. It also is something that if you're doing advanced athletics, you shouldn't be guessing, that you should be checking. And what do I mean by that? I mean that this is a meter where if you're a diabetic, this looks very similar. The diabetics come and go out of my clinic and they check their glucose. But if you're somebody on the ketogenic diet and you have, I don't know, cancer, brain injuries, seizures, and I ask you to say, well, if you're going to do this, I need you to stay on board and keep track of things. And I don't mean just checking your numbers once in a blue moon. I mean keeping track of how well your numbers look when you're on a random Saturday giving a lecture. So this is a meter. I just poked my thumb. And in that meter, there's a drip of blood that will go into the strip. And within about 5 seconds here, you're going to see my sugar is 87. Now I'm going to put a ketone strip in. I'm going to use that same drip of blood. Maybe. There we go. And these meters, there's a couple of them out there. I like the ForaCare one, and that's what this is. And you put that drip of blood in, and in 10 seconds, you're going to see what my ketone level is. So when patients say, Doc, I really want to do this, I really want to get better, I'm like, you can't play, especially when you have brain injuries, when you have cancer. My ketone is 1.1. So what is my body fueling on? Ketones. Because I'm here and this performance matters to me and I want my brain working really well. And I don't want it inflamed, I want it working off of ketones. And just like the athletes that go keto, their performance is highly related to how well they repaired from the last injury. So my body has plenty of stored fat. I could probably not eat for a week, plenty of stored fat. And so does most of the people I see. But I can't use that fat until the glucose is decreased, until my insulin is lower. And when you look at these athletes, they say, but I need the glucose to get that good out of the gate, advantage. Sure, if you run the 100-meter dash, we can talk about practice a ketogenic diet, but when you perform, fuel your body with glucose. But if you do anything else, it's not about the first 10 seconds that wins most of these games. It's the consistent function in their brain, focus for the game, improvement in their athletic and flexibility, and can they fuel their brain all the way through the competition. He who has the fuel at the end of the day totally wins. The question is, does it mess with your metabolism to go in and out of ketosis? So I recommend you stay in ketosis if you want anti-inflammatory, if you want high BDNF, if you want improved sleep, if you want an enhanced immune system. These aren't like flippant things I'm giving you. There are evidence-based studies behind. We are empowering and enhancing your body's ability to repair and to function in the realm of autoimmune problems, anti-cancer. The book that I wrote, absolutely a 71-year-old patient whose immune system was shot, the cancer was in her white blood cells, lymph nodes everywhere. Just celebrated 75 years off of chemotherapy with a normal white blood cell count. Praise be to God, but also to ketones. They were wrong. She said, I have an autoimmune problem, and my doctors tell me that we're supposed to have anti-meat, anti-low fat. And I said, unequivocally, they were wrong. And I was wrong. I was taught that too. I took that test. I get it. And standing up as a change voice in where the evidence has been and is showing us, but it's really hard in the world of medicine to stand outside the pack. You're the first ones to take advantage of. In the process of what the ketogenic diet does, this workshop is not going to satisfy all your questions. But I have this YouTube channel with like 180 videos. And if you want to learn more about it, it really is there that you can watch over and over again. I would highly recommend that you buy the book. The book are the lessons I taught my mom, whose brain was not working when I wrote the book. She could not hardly remember how to do this. And she's a go-getter. She is a strong woman. She is very intelligent, but she was broken. And these are the little lessons I wrote her. And thanks to the encouragement of my husband, I pushed print, and I made it into a book. And the book has been wildly successful. It funds a lot of the things that I'm able to do as far as take time for YouTube videos, read the studies, be the doctor who isn't constantly seeing patients, but instead educates and then does things like this. If you want to know more about the ketogenic diet, I will answer brief questions about that, but I don't want to keep you past the time that I said. Okay, so the question was, do athletes need this? Now, the other place I like to show patients is, or show people who say, do you need carbs? I told you 2 of my kids liked to play the sport of debate. And if you look at teenagers trying to compete over the sport of how well does your brain work, watch what happens when the debaters in the early morning part of the round are fueled by sugar. And although they've got lots of energy, when you get to the end of the day where you've sifted out all of the folks that have not made it to the next round, and now you have the advanced debaters, and we're 12 hours into debating. That's a lot of brain fuel. Kids on ketones, and even if they have to sip on them to use them, they've been using ketones throughout the day. The mental performance, the stay on task, the lack of emotional lability, which is normal in teenagers. But if you're playing a sport about your brain, take the advantage of some ketones and then watch what happens to teenage brains that stay on track. So I think that's just a highly teachable moment of what happens in my house. I didn't plan for that, but you'll see if you go to if you go to YouTube, you'll see a couple of the interviews with my kids saying, yeah, this is what I would do. All right, if you're gonna take a picture, this is my favorite picture. When I go to teenage shelters, when I do the teenage talk, this is my favorite picture. It is a picture of a teenage brain and all the different parts that are actively dividing at the moment this picture was taken. And if you looked at an adult brain, you would get to see like 2 little parts of your hippocampus is going to have some movements. You're going to have some areas in the smell cortex, and then everything else is shut down. But a teenager's brain is doing this. And it is difficult to pass that to them to say, no, you don't get it. Your hippocampus is better than mine. If you screw it up, you still have the next several years to replace, repair, plump up, grow, swell your hippocampus. That when I look at the important parts that teenagers don't often get the dots connected for, their teenage brain stops maturing whenever those dendrites are swollen. So that 13-year-old boy who had a concussion, and the concussion is measured in the swelling. So when his pain stopped, now I can start that timer that says in 6 months you can start maturing that brain again. And when we look at different animal studies as a teenage mouse brain, if we go into their brain and we try to stimulate the progression of their brain when it's swollen, the cells turn out funky. They're like tumorous. They don't look right. So you say, well, can't their brain just keep maturing? Why does it stop maturing for 6 months after trauma? And there is some sort of protective mechanism that says, well, if you push it, the cells they're making aren't normal. So there is something about when the brain is not inflamed, then it can continue to mature. That your hippocampus stops maturing, and that's one of the biggest punchlines. So this is one of the curriculums that the teachers were assigned to say, we want the students to come up with all of these different ways where the brain are the symptoms of concussions, and as long as the curriculum accomplished this, they got the funding and the reward for delivering the class. And I think as a group we did pretty good. Appears dazed and confused, answers questions slowly, forgets about the assignments, loses consciousness, behavior changes, shows poor concentration, seems unsure of the score, moves clumsily, headaches, memory, woozing, nausea, fuzzy double vision, confusion. We did pretty good. And coaches, it's amazing how well your students know this. If you do the exact same thing that I did, have them stand up if they had a concussion, sit down after they've said one symptom, and have the rest of the room fill in the blanks of what does it look like to somebody on the outside. You know, when I look at the wrong, or one of the wrong answers, one of the true answers, but is often picked, who in here picked the suffocation as a true answer or as a false answer? Yeah, it sounds profound, right? So when I was in that shock trauma, and if you've got any of the medical professionals in the room, if you get somebody in a car accident and they come into your ICU with a head injury, there are actually calculations that say, all right, we've just pummeled energy into that brain in the form of a trauma, a head injury. And as those brain neurons swell, you're in a closed bone area, and there's one hole down the spinal cord. That's where the only door is. So as the brain swells, there's actually a calculation, one of these easy answers that says, as soon as the calculation gets to this number, we should actually relieve the pressure ourselves, because this little nerve at the back of the neck that kind of goes down that spinal cord, if you pinch that, that's the one that's in charge of telling those muscles in the diaphragm to keep breathing. And without that, they're dead. There's no planning for anything except organ donation after this. So they take the neurosurgeons to the front of the line, and they cut a square in their head, and they lay the skull next to the table for the next 2 to 3 days. And then the swelling can go up, but at least it doesn't go down to pinch off that dead nerve. And it is calculatable. We know exactly when to do it. And as soon as the swelling's down, they put that back on their head, and the bone grows together, and off they go. It's a little bit intense and gross, but it is life-saving. And when the swelling gets too much, that's real. When they go to sleep, somebody asked, can they go to sleep after a concussion? Sure, that's when they repair, but it shouldn't be right after the concussion. You should be monitored and sleep for a few hours, make sure that they're okay. Because it's in the depth of those sleep times that not just are they have a little headache, they can't talk, they can't focus, their pupils are doing goofy things, their reflexes are down, They're not normal, not just a little groggy. This is just another picture of where that, that connection is. All right, so we're about to march into a bunch of brains that have not just one hole, but a whole bunch of holes. And I want to make sure that you understand what the prefrontal cortex is. So that's the part of the brain right behind your forehead. The pink part, it's often called the place where you have executive function. And if you have a college course where you look about neuroanatomy, they say, this is the executive function. And I think, that's just so lame. Like, you're not doing it justice. So I'd like to explain what the prefrontal cortex does by telling you a story about a zipper. So I want you to imagine a high school. And in this high school, there's this really long corridor. Everybody's in class. And out into the hallway walks the cutest girl in the school. And she's got, I don't know, a cheerleading outfit on, and she's got her wiggle going on as she walks down this hallway. And from the other end of the hallway comes the cutest boy in school. And as soon as he gets into the hallway, he's not much paying attention, but his game is on as soon as he sees that she's in the hallway. And he's walking his way down that hallway too. And as they get close enough to see one another, she notices that his zipper's down. And instantly she has power. If you could monitor what's happening in her prefrontal cortex the moment she assesses that zipper, she gets to decide based on her intelligence, how well she's thinking, does she have a headache? But she's also going to use what type of moral fiber runs through that part of her brain. How well has she been imprinted as far as, okay, the dude really has been nasty to my best friend, so I have power now. Should I like Snapchat this and majorly screw up his life? Or maybe I want to like give him a little bit of help saying, hey, XYZ. Or maybe I just want to pretend it's not existing. I'm going to look down, not looking, not looking. But she decides it in an instant. It's based on her history. It's based on her life. It's based on whether or not her brain is inflamed. But that prefrontal cortex not just decides the executive function of how we make decisions and if you can do math better. Can you do the left-handed hook shot? It's also based on your morals and the self-talk that naturally goes through our brains. And you don't get to decide in many of the things. It's a reflex. How she uses the social capital over his downed zipper is everything about her prefrontal cortex. So we're going to watch a bunch of broken prefrontal cortexes, and I'm going to remind you the moment of the zipper. What's she going to do? So this is a 37-year-old male. Take a guess what happened to his brain. Alcohol. He is a 37-year-old who has used excessive alcohol for at least 2 decades. Started right after he left the house, just under 2 decades. His prefrontal cortex isn't just one hole from a baseball injury. It's now got pretty uniform effect, front, back, side, up, down. There's some broken places in the way his brain is working. Let's do the next question. So let me just tackle a couple.
Okay. Everybody get that one? Everybody got 6.1. Got your notes? Is it working easiest for me to go through the questions and everything first and then go through notes? Is that okay how we're running this? Is there anybody who would prefer to do one or the other first? Is everybody okay? Okay. I guess I try to go through my notes so it gives you the parts that kicked out to me. But if there's something that I'm missing, please jump in that you're not sure about or asking about. Don't hesitate to jump in and stop me. I just try to keep going so we don't drag this out for 6 hours and bore you to death. Okay, this one is a common question. Even over in the big support group that we have over on Facebook, you will hear people talking about this all the time of when they're exercising or when they're trying to do something. Do they need carbs to do it? The answer is unequivocally no. No, you need fat. You need to be fat adapted. So if you're looking at it at the athletic level or at us trying to get up and down the steps and carry laundry and do the things at the house, I'm not out running any damn marathon, but man, is there a difference of carrying a load of laundry up the steps on ketones and carrying a load of laundry up the steps on glucose. Night and day difference of how my heart functions, how my heart rate stays, how I recover from that flight up the steps. I still struggle carrying things up and down steps. How what I'm being fueled by is a direct correlation between how I do that. So I hope you guys pay attention and see when you know your ketones are doing well, are you just a little bit stronger? Are you just a little bit more focused? Are you just a little bit able to do something that you normally wouldn't do? I know I bonk out easy on glucose when I'm off the wagon. Oh, it's just rough. Okay, use ketones when or ketosis train in ketosis. So if you are going to the gym, if you are trying to get in that routine, I know we're not doing athletic things here. We are just trying to get healthy routines established. If you're going to the gym, have ketones in circulation. If you don't have ketones in circulation of your own, drink them. Have ketones in circulation while you're working out, while you're running, while you're walking on a treadmill, while you're swimming, anything, going for just a gentle walk. Have ketones in circulation because what we're wanting to do is train your body to go find a ketone. So, not look for the glucose. Okay, a concussed teenage brain. This one just amazes me when you're talking how many kids, again, we're lucky our kids know their damn name. How many of our kids didn't get knocked out? I mean, my kid never got knocked out and taken to the hospital for an injury, but he played hockey and football and everything. You know how many times my kid had his bell rung that we didn't think anything of it, that, shake it off, go on, you're okay. You know, those kind of things. We live in a small town football community. I mean, it's sad to think how these kids are pushed, how the coaches will push these boys. They get their bell rung. They're not, they're not laying out cold on the thing, but to look at that video and to know how much damage is still happening to these kids is just heart-wrenching. How many of us, I had one girl in a class one time that fell off of a horse and hit her head. She didn't get knocked out or anything, but she fell off a horse when she was a kid. Horseback riding in our area seems to be big accident things. I had one lady that had a hip messed up for the fascia work that I do, all from falling off of a horse. But the same thing, you got your bell rung, but didn't get knocked out, didn't go to the hospital. But dang, kind of what happened. The old man just telling what was the story that he was saying, how he couldn't remember, couldn't smell, those kind of things. When you look at how many people have injuries like that, that something, whatever area of the brain is affected is what's going to affect their function. So the functionality is a direct effect of what part of the brain is being ruined right now. What part was hit on? What part is dying? What part is gray matter instead of the nice vibrant colors when she shows the SPECT scan? So you'll see that time after time in the pictures when she shows those bright colors are functioning brain. The holes are gray matter. And wherever that gray matter is the deficit that's going to be in your functionality. So, prefrontal cortex, your executive function, the zipper story. I think that is one. It's just an easy one. Can we all think back of somebody? And here's where the grace comes in. God's grace comes in now because you can see and hear and feel the immaturity of someone's brain that is immature. They could be 40 years old, but they still have that immature brain of, did you ever watch an incident or something happen and you look at them and it's like, dude, you really think that's funny? Like, that's not funny. It doesn't matter whatever the circumstances is, whether it's a zipper or something more traumatic, but it's like you look at it as, how many of us look at people like that? And before I would probably judge quite harshly. I was one of those people that had to grow up quickly. I know Nancy was too. There's so many of us that had that trauma past that we had to grow up and be young adults way before we were ready to be. But it's easy to look at somebody else now and think, dude, grow the hell up. Like, I mean, I just almost have that cut and dry, even with Lance, when Lance and I got together, he still had, a kid's mentality of, dude, grow up. We don't get to deal with that, drag these things on in life. And you look at somebody that 40 years old, 50 years old, whatever, that has that immaturity level. And now I have more grace to look at it. It's like, what happened in your childhood that you think that's funny to watch somebody else hurt or struggle whatever, so put whatever circumstance on it. But I think that is where, again, this course gives you some grace to understand, nope, I'm not an alcoholic. Nope, I've never had a major concussion, but you can bet your butt I've had my bell rung. Just how many things, that immaturity of that frontal lobe working in it.
Quick question, Tammy.
Yeah.
But can they grow out of it just with cognitive, behavioral, overcoming I'm thinking of the older 40, 50-year-old.
You know what? I guess that's where she said, can you guarantee it? No, but the best benefit in it is ketones and circulation. Get your sleep in. That's where all these steps start to come into play of,
that's how they help themselves grow out of it if they want to make the choice to.
Yep.
Okay. I was just curious. I mean, I get it with the kids, but I wasn't sure with some of the adults I see and go, really? I comedians, you watch them going, how is this funny?
Right? It is. And that's so true.
Can they grow out of it? Okay.
But here's where I kind of stick up for this. And as much as I know this brains course is overwhelming, it's death by fire hose kind of information. But when I first started doing these classes with Dr. Boz, I could not hit Zoom. Like, I'm not kidding when I thought I was going to either have a panic attack and either poop or puke, because I wanted to do it so bad, but I was used to working in an office over a desk with one patient at a time. And the thought of turning on a Zoom that I had never done in my life made me want to throw up. Like, it was an anxiety level that really I had to outweigh the desire to help people in the midst of the COVID thing, because I wasn't allowed medically. I'm licensed under Ohio State Medical Board, so I was not allowed medically to bring patients into my office. It was killing me to not see patients. This was a step of, okay, I can do this and see a patient, but I was so wigged out. I was so uptight, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And that was just doing one computer, one Zoom call, one little support group at a time. It was awful. And I look at it 6 years down the road, I'm sitting here with 4 computer screens staring at me. And the highlight of every day is when I get to get on Zoom with all of you. That is, yes, I can do the computer work. I love whatever behind the scenes, but what I love and enjoy is right here with my people. And it's night and day difference of what my brain used to be as to where I am now. So it's not a quick fix by no means. I mean, you guys can tell when I stutter with my words and I can't click back and forth very fast. You guys will see when my ketones are good and when they're not. You will see the amount of information I'm able to spit out whether it's on the website, the blog posts, the social media posts and things like that. The amount of work I'm able to accomplish when I have ketones in circulation is night and day difference to where I'm struggling. I'm just the stress or whatever that makes you struggle. You watch that up and down of it really is a direct effect on our brain health. And that goes to play. You can take the circumstances may change in all of it, but each of you can apply whatever. I know I just keep picking on Nancy because I know her personally she's dealing with stress right now with her daddy. I mean, she's got a lot of weight on her shoulders. Gina's going through a lot of things right now. When we have the weight of the world on our shoulders, how we deal with stress is a direct link to how many ketones are in circulation, how much is that BDNF, how good is our sleep, how well are we exercising. All of those things that you're learning about come into play of how do we deal with life? How well do we deal with life? I will show you, most of you know my story enough to know, the donuts that I always talk about that my brother always had to have in the family functions. Lance is already over moving my sister-in-law out of the house. So it's an emotional day as it is because the kids are there trying to go through my brother's stuff and move what matters. Lance goes walking in and look what he sends me. That's the donuts we grew up on. It's not the donuts. It's the familyness and getting together, but it's still that emotional connection to this. I mean, I started crying this morning when Lance sent me the picture. It's not the damn donuts. I know that's the last meal I had with my brother was laying on the bed with him dying an hour before he took his last breath. And he wanted that damn donut. He wanted that donut on a, so I have a picture of the donut laying on the bed with us, laying with my brother, because he wanted that damn donut, because that's what our family connects, the love and the familyness and happiness and peace. Everything is in these stupid donuts. And now we don't eat them at all. And it's like, I try to keep stressing to my family, it is not the donut. It is the family getting together around the donuts that matters. And it's just little things like that, though, how our brains develop. But the emotional connection, when I see the stupid box of donuts, you put an emotional connection with something, it connects. It may be as stupid as a box of donuts, or it may be as meaningful as you being a leader in your church group over children, or your coworkers, or Gina's running a whole damn business of old employees and new employees. That emotional connection is what's going to help her navigate through life and be strong in who Gina is. Nancy caring about her daddy. When we finally got her to understand, quit stressing about what your daddy's wanting to eat, go enjoy the moment with your 93-year-old daddy at the table and take the blessing, or however old, I forget how old he is, but when you can take that emotional connection and put it in the correct place and use it to your benefit instead of to your detriment. That is where the benefit of the brain health comes in, of understanding you do have the power and control, and what you're doing to help grow a healthy brain and keeping ketones in circulation and keeping that glucose out of circulation is a direct effect on how well your brain will work tomorrow and the day after and the week after and the month after. It is a direct effect, because I'm telling you, the few times in 6 years that we have jumped off, like there was a 1 year through Christmas, we majorly just went back to Christmas habits of Christmas cookies and things like that. By the end of that Christmas season, I swear to God, I didn't know my own name. Like, I cannot believe how fast I went backwards. It was awful. So what you're doing in building keto continuum matters. There is no accident that we have to learn how to get ketones in circulation to help heal the brain. So whether that's healing from a healthy hippocampus, from, a head injury, sex, drugs, rock and roll, or carbs and sugar, it is healing the brain from the trauma. So the swelling of the brain. Zipper story, 6 months after that, 6 months after the brain swelling, before it starts developing and growing again. So again, how many of us go 6 months without swelling our brain? 6 months without alcohol, 6 months without sugar and carbs, 6 months without some kind of trauma of late night sleep, shallow sleep and not sleeping and not getting that BDNF. How many of us go 6 months? I mean, that's hard. That's not things to take easy. So now when you take it of how many of us see people over in the big group, they do great Sunday through Thursday. You'll see their numbers are doing good. They have the routines down Monday through Thursday. Come Friday and Saturday, they jump ship, swell that brain up over the weekend, do whatever on the weekend. But come Monday, they're right back on, and they wonder why they just keep going up and down. Like, oh my gosh, my numbers will be good. And then it don't. Oh, but I'm not losing weight. Oh, but I can't sleep. Oh, and you see this roller coaster ride. It's because it's 6 months every time they swell their brain before it starts again. That's why I'm saying this has to become a lifestyle. This can't be something we do on the week, during the week, and jump ship on the weekends if you want to build brain health. Now, if you're just in this to drop some inflammation and a couple pounds, more power to you. But most of us by our age, we're dealing with life circumstances. We're dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, diabetes, losing limbs, seizures. We're dealing with hard stuff, and we don't get to jump ship every weekend. So celebration is your birthday once a year. A celebration meal is your anniversary dinner or something like that. It is not because it's Saturday. Does that make sense? It's not because I worked all week no, that means you did the work, you stayed healthy. Take the benefit and the win of healing your body through the weekend, not jumping ship and ruining and backtracking everything you just accomplished. That's why it's so important in the brain, and you cannot get people to understand that. You can't do this part-time. It has to become your lifestyle. That is where the brain health comes in. Ultimately, we have to heal the brain, period. Phrenic nerve, the death by suffocation. So much of that, just when that brain swells up, it cuts off that phrenic nerve. We all had that, heard the stories of the kids with the alcohol poisoning and stuff like that goes to sleep on the couch and never wakes up. being drunk or anything like that, or that have a concussion and that phrenic nerve gets cut off. I mean, that's just, they're done. I mean, it's just gone. Again, it's just swelling in the brain is what kills them. It's great if they are in the hospital and can cut the part of their brain off and give it room to swell. But when it's the teenage kid drunk on the couch, letting that brain swell and everybody just thinks he's sleeping off a hangover, that's where we lose our kids. That's where the college kid that never comes home because he partied too much and his brain swelled up with alcohol poisoning. I mean, it's just those kind of things do matter. The autoimmunity. How many of us have heard of autoimmune questions or problems? How many people that we have the fibromyalgia, all the autoimmune issues that people talk about, everything from PCOS to fibromyalgia, all the autoimmune things that they were taught wrong. You know, and I love that. I really respect Dr. Boz that she could say, you know what, I was taught that too, and that was wrong. We told everybody wrong. You know, how many of us were fit back in the fitness days in the 70s and 80s and 90s and early 2000s that it was all about those healthy carbs. It was all about that whole wheat. It was all about the, I mean, the wheatgrass and all the things that I look at now and I'm like, oh, good Lord. But we were taught wrong. I mean, every nutrition class, it was, you need those veggies for the fiber. You know, we need the antioxidants in those blueberries. I mean, through my own cancer, I thought the blueberries saved my damn life because of the antioxidants in the blueberries every morning. Little did I know I was raising my glucose over anything that I ever needed it to be. Eating those blueberries every damn morning. I mean, just stuff that we were taught wrong. So it's not just that we gave everybody else misinformation. We lived it too. You know, so having information, and I know now I respect Dr. Boz that she's saying, you know what? No, we don't need that. Ketosis is what's required, not the fiber, not the other things that we were doing. Okay. Dr. Boz's kids, I know her personally enough to know that her kids, they know when it's time to take a test, when they go to wrestle, when they go to debate, they go to whatever, you know, two of her boys were in debate and everything, but that one little guy, her baby, he's the one that wrestles. He's the one that runs track. He's the one that does all the things. So those kids know when they have an issue or something coming up that is important to them, they get themselves in ketosis. Like she says, do they live it all the time when they're at home? Yeah, but they're off in college. You know, she don't have everyday control over them anymore. But when they know it matters, you bet your butt those boys are in ketosis because they do know it now. 37-year-old alcoholic. Did you see the holes in his brain? So that's just an occasional alcoholic that most of us will think nothing of. And how many of us just have a drink on the weekend or a drink after work every night or whatever that they think it's no big deal. And it's like, you know, I pray, you know, my own daughter someday, you know, it's nothing. It's a drink every night before, you know, a drink after work, a drink to calm down, a drink to whatever. And she's not drunk. I don't mean that, but I know that it's a hard part it's an everyday part of life. And that's a hard thing to swallow because they'll say, I'm not drunk. Well, I don't drink that much. If you're having a drink every day, you got more issues because the brain is underdeveloped, period. Somebody that has to have a drink every day. And that's hard to accept because it's like, I'm fine. I can drive. I'm not, you know, I'm not drunk. I'm not whatever. But it's like, are you looking for legalities of how drunk can you be and still function? Or are you looking for health? Are you looking for building health and brain cells and how your brain is developing? That's what you need to look at. Again, you can't be sober and clean and everything all week long. We can replace that with alcohol. We can replace that with recreation drugs. We can replace that with weed. You know, I notice how many states right now that weed is legal. So it's one of those people act like it's no big deal. And it's like, you know, again, are you looking at legalities or are you looking at brain health? Brain health, it is a big deal. If you're looking at what's legal or what's not, more power to you. But if you're looking at trying to heal your brain, having weed in circulation every day, having alcohol in circulation every day, having carbs and sugar in circulation every day is not beneficial to your brain health, period. And it's hard to accept all that. It's hard to put carbs and sugar and thinking that eating a pizza is doing damage, just like having marijuana in your brain every day. I mean, those two things people do not compute together, but it's so true. It doesn't matter what is swelling the brain up. That deterioration of the brain and that swelling constantly in the brain is what will stop the progression of the brain health. So, all right. Let's go through the questions and then I'll go back down through more notes. A concussion swells a part of the brain. This swelling stops dramatically and slows the brain signaling in that area. True or false? That's a true. A concussed teenage brain stops recording memory for up to 6 months. That's false. Yeah, it's not it doesn't stop a memory. It stops the growth and progression and healing. A concussed teenage brain stops developing for up to 6 months. That's true. That's the truth. So again, when we send our kids off to college, that they make it to class all during the week, but they tie one on Friday and Saturday, that brain stops developing for 6 months. Now, mind you, they only wait till the next weekend to do it again. You know, they're not waiting 6 months for that brain to get back down to normal and start progressing again. They do it again next weekend and the next weekend. Or even they're good kids. They only party once a month. Or how many of us are, I remember Lance and I, you know, we'd have kids one weekend and kids no week the next weekend because he had his, you know, shared custody with his girls. When we had kids, of course, we'd never drink, we'd never anything. But the weekend the kids weren't here, we'd get a bottle of wine, have a nice meal. You know, we weren't sitting around plowed, but we put alcohol in our brain every other weekend. In the midst of some of the most emotional times of our life, trying to deal with children, trying to deal with custodies, trying to deal with weekends and visitations and divorces and spouses and exes and in-laws and outlaws. Adding alcohol to that mix every other weekend, when we thought it was no harm, no foul. We're not drunk. We're not crazy. We're not doing anything crazy. We're sitting down having a nice meal and a glass of wine. But a glass of wine to somebody that doesn't drink, hell, you know, a half hour after a glass of wine, I know my brain is swelled up because I'm giggles and shits and giggles for an hour and then I'm ready for bed. I mean, it's just, I'm tired. So I know it affected my brain, but through some of the emotional stresses of life, when you turn to that one drink, think of what's happening to your brain. You're giving your body the least benefit and the least help to work through a stressful situation, whether that situation is a divorce and kids and exes, or whether that situation is a business deal and work you got to go to, or whether that situation is taking care of a sick daddy that is just really hard. Can you see where even a glass of alcohol, one little glass of wine, is still detrimental to your health and your brain development through an emotional state of life? So when you hit a stressor is the time most people want to turn to alcohol, whether they want to turn to drugs, alcohol, marijuana, whatever their vice is, or a pizza. When you turn to the carbs and the sugar and the swelling in the brain is the least time when you're stressed out, is the least time you need to do it. So our coping skill, that is why they matter so much. That's why we keep harping on something so silly is, what is your coping skill in the middle of the stress? You know, I really wish my sister-in-law wasn't over there eating a box of donuts today, because I know she's crying. I know she's struggling. I know she's going through every piece of shit my brother has stashed in that house over there. And she's going to do it on a box of donuts. And it breaks my heart for her because she don't know any different. She's diabetic though. Go figure. Okay. High BDNF repairs brain damaged cells faster and is linked to less dead brain cells from a concussion. That's true. That is true. That BDNF, we've got it. That's where the deep sleep comes in. You got to get that BDNF. So again, see where it's all starting to tie together? Your sleep matters. This isn't just about, gee, did I get a good night's sleep? If you're not getting that BDNF, when and if you have good BDNF during a healthy, happy time of life, when the stressor hits, when the trauma hits, when the diagnosis comes, when the life kicks you in the gut, the better your BDNF is prior to a stressor, the better you're going and more resilient you're going to be to work through it. So Gina right now, we are pounding in her right now of we've got to get her as strong as possible because she has a major, major, major stress event happening in July. So we are trying to encourage her and get her as chemically strong as she can be right now so that when that gut punch comes in July, and it is going to be a big gut punch in July for her, She handles it with, I got my armor on. Give it to me, Lord, I'm ready. I mean, that is what I envision that I want for her now before that gut punch hits. So, how many of us, Nancy's dealing with sick mom, daddy. I'm dealing with sick mama. Rose, I don't know you enough to know your details yet, but I'm sure life is not perfect for you either. It's one of those when we all are dealing with that. How we navigate through the good times is a direct effect of how we're going to navigate through the stressors. Does that make sense? Why this is so important? Is everybody getting that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Extreme brain swelling causes death by suffocation, pinching off the signal to breathe. True or false? That one's true. That's where she's talking about that phrenic nerve again. That it's when that phrenic nerve gets pinched off because of the brain swelling, that is when the diaphragm, the phrenic nerve feeds the diaphragm. So if your diaphragm don't work, you don't do that breath in. You don't get to take that breath. So when that nerve gets pinched off, the diaphragm does not breathe for you, does not pull that air into your lungs. So again, that is where when the drunk teenager falls asleep on the couch and the kids all laugh at him and say, "I'll let him sleep it off." That's all well and good if he's just drunk and it's not that life-threatening. But how do you judge that by a drunk kid laying on the couch at a sorority house? How do you navigate that and make that call of what is too much? What is alcohol poisoning? Where's that level at when you're in a group full of a group of kids? How do you make that judgment call on what's too much? Who's the one kid that's laying on the couch?
Can you repeat that phrase that what you just said?
Yep. Extreme brain swelling causes death by suffocation, pinching off the signal to breathe. So that's what Dr. Boz has. But what I'm adding to it is the phrenic nerve gets pinched off. The diaphragm does not work.
I'm trying to get all of this. Would you mind repeating it again?
Nope. Extreme brain swelling causes death by suffocation, pinching off the signal to breathe, which is the phrenic nerve that feeds the diaphragm. Extreme brain swelling causes death by suffocation, pinching off the signal to breathe, which is the phrenic nerve feeding the diaphragm. So when you get the teenage boys having the frat parties and they're just sleeping it off, that's where it's terrifying to me. That is one of the scariest moments, I think, as a kid, in a kid's growing up, sowing their oats, sending them off to college, and having some kid drunk enough to just go sleep it off on a couch somewhere in a frat house. And who calls the shots on when you've had enough that, oh my gosh, he's not okay? When does alcohol poisoning hit? And when is it just, oh, I need to sleep off a hangover? Either way, it is brain damage happening. Whether it's just he's sleeping off a hangover or is he in there in that phrenic nerve, they just go to sleep. The phrenic nerve is pinched off. They stop taking a breath and they just sleep it off and don't wake up. And it's heart-wrenching to think how many kids that happens to. In fact, I'd love to find
Does that like sleep apnea? Is that what happens with sleep apnea as well?
let me think. No, because it's not, the sleep apnea is not pinching off the nerve, but it is dropping the oxygen to the brain. So the sleep
Right.
apnea, but it's not pinching off the phrenic nerve, the swelling of the phrenic nerve. But you could be onto something of the swelling of the brain from the carbs and the sugar and the overweight and all of that could be impinging. I could see where that could make things more difficult.
Well, I have both. My brain falls asleep so much that I
Uh-huh.
don't breathe. It doesn't have anything to do with, my weight or
Yeah.
any anatomical whatever. I have both. Both is
I'd be
going.
curious on that. That would be a neat
Uh.
question if you ever get in front of Boz again to ask, because I'd be curious to see how that phrenic nerve ties into.
I think she did mention once, like the use of. I'm not sure because I've listened to her, and like when people use like diazepam or you know, some certain drugs. I
Yep.
think she's saying that that happens, but I was not a big drug user.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, I did use that when I was in a car accident for, you know, the damage from a car accident, but it wasn't extreme. So, anyways, I'm just still trying to figure that out in my head.
I think that's a really good question. I'd be really interested on the answer to
Yeah.
that because I mean, think about it. I mean, but the swelling in the brain, whether that's coming from
Yeah.
carbs and sugar, do you notice is your sleep apnea worse when you're off the wagon, so to speak, not making ketones?
Um,
Is it
no,
any?
my um no, I don't know. I haven't been off, you know, I haven't been off on carbs and sugar for a while. So
Good, 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 good.
um
It's just interesting. That would be a neat one to.
yeah, but I'm just wondering like prior to, but my since I've been doing the GLP-1, my numbers are better.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have as many episodes. My episodes were like really high. Didn't matter if I was on or off carbs, but did say it takes 6 months.
Yeah.
So I haven't had 6 months. So anyways, yeah. So it's
Just interesting. But again,
yeah.
are you guys here? The whole point in this, are you guys seeing where it all ties together? Where where a little bit of alcohol once in a while affects your brain and your health and your healing. A little bit of poor sleep affects your brain and your healing. A little bit of, oh, I just went off the wagon this week and I just, I just want to have a piece of cake with my kids tonight for the birthday. When that's once a year, twice a year, okay, you learn to flip that switch, you jump right back in. When it's every weekend or even once a month, it is not worth. That is why we have to teach you to do a life. This has to become a lifestyle. And then you look at your calendar and you pick and choose the moments or what you're going to do to be different. To if you want a celebration, if you want to, you just want to not worry about you're going on a cruise in July. You want to go on the cruise and say, you know what? I'm going to go enjoy it. Okay. But your chemistry needs to be good and ready before you get there. You know, if you're going to be one of those that, you know what, I want to go sit on the beach and drink some fruity fun drink on the beach every day for a week, and I'm going to do it and come home and shoot clean up and get back at it. Make it a decision. Make it okay, but here's my promise to myself until then. Not again, I'm not encouraging you to jump off, but I'm saying whatever the decision's going to be, make it a plan. Don't let it just derail you and let stress and life push you off the wagon and make you fall and crash and burn because now you're stumbling out of control. Now you're just falling face first. Go in with you know what? My anniversary's coming up. I'm going to dinner that night. I'm going to have a half a glass of wine with my husband. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to wake up next day, get right back on track. And here's what I'm going to do going into it. Here's what I'm going to do coming out of it. I'm doing it with a plan and intention, but it's not going to be every weekend. It is not going to be once a month even. It's going to be, I'm going to pick and choose the times throughout the year that I'm going to let my brain go back to swelled mode because that's what a drink of alcohol is going to do. That is what a bunch of carbs and sugar is going to do. That is what a stressor is going to do. All of the things in life, how many things can you deal with at one time? When you're dealing with too many stressors at once, one gut punch you can handle. But you guys know me enough to know when life hits me and it just keeps coming is when I miserably fail. I can handle a lot of stress. I can handle a lot of things one at a time. I don't multitask with stress well. It's one of the, when the year it was my last year with my brother, when it was trying to drive back and forth to Cleveland, be up there and support my sister-in-law and be there with my brother and help my parents heal some broken. I was ready to run away. So you will get there. You will understand what can you deal with. And when you start going into life with a plan and making it a lifestyle, it changes of, you know what? I'm not going to go down and see my mama today on a day that I'm emotional because I know what my mom does to me. She badgers me. So today's not the day I'm going to go try to relate to my mom because I'm going to deal with one stressor and it's going to be going through my brother's crap today. That's enough for me right now. It's not raining in my kitchen, so I'm taking the blessing and I'll go help my brother. But that's enough for me. I can't put my mama on top of it. and I know it. Or I would come home wanting the bowl of cereal tonight and crying. And I don't want to do it. I'm not giving my brother or my mother the power to do that to me. So I will help one step at a time as I know I can emotionally handle it. So I will help with moving my sister today. I'm choosing my battles for my own brain health. And that's where I want you guys to too. Learn to make it that. Come on in, Nancy.
Well, yeah, I'm just, kind of processing in my head. I'm in such a good place. I've had 1 month of ketones of 1.1. Once I had 0.8, once I had 0.9. Other than that, it's been between 1.1, 1.3.
First of all, kudos right there. Just that. Kudos to you.
And I'm not having these big jumps, but you know what? I have been stable for a full month. I have a birthday coming up in a couple of weeks, I guess. I have no desire to have a cake. I have no desire.
Right?
I don't drink. I haven't drank for I don't know how long. I'm not counting. I have no desire to drink. The sleep I still have to work on. But I'm just in such a good place and I feel so good. I have no desire to pick anything up. I just don't want to. I mean, I don't want to, try to predict my future.
Right.
But I'm pretty content where I am right now.
Nancy, I am so
and I don't want
proud
to
of you.
I don't want to
Right,
go
exactly.
I don't want to go backwards.
Exactly.
It
That you
feels so
worked
good.
so hard. You have worked so hard for so long since the week you came in with me. I'm just telling you, I'm so proud of you,
Yeah.
of knowing the struggle, because I know this hasn't been an easy journey.
Right.
Knowing the struggles and the life things that you've walked through, that's saying, look at the difference of how you handle life now as what you did 6 months ago.
Right. Right. Right.
That's lifestyle change. That's
Yeah.
building health. And I am so proud of you. And glory to God for you, the strength and the bandwidth in your brain to do what you're doing. But I am so proud of you.
Yeah. I think for me, this is just me personally, is to push forward doesn't work for me because
Mhm.
really my body is very stubborn. It's
Mhm.
not ready.
Yep.
And 2 meals a day. I've done 2 meals a day probably since I started with you, pretty close to anyways. I haven't been able to go one, and I don't try to force myself to do
Yep.
it. If I do, that's when I fall off the wagon.
Yep.
So
Nancy's one of those, in case you girls don't know, Nancy's one of those, if she pushes too hard, her body says hell no. Her body, her brain, everything. It's like
Yeah.
she's got to slow and when I say slow and steady wins this race, slow and steady wins every time. We could push, but you can only push as fast as your chemistry will go. Gina's another one. Gina's done what, 20 days, something fast like that. And it's like, because she can white knuckle it through it and do it. And she
Yeah.
feels good and it works well.
Yeah,
But her
great.
chemistry is not ready for it. And then as soon as she eats again, guess what happens?
Oh yeah. Yeah. See. Yeah.
So if you're not doing a stressor and getting the benefit from that stressor and making baby steps forward, that stressor isn't a good stress. So if she can get the benefits of a 3-day fast, learning how to eat for the 4 days after that, learning to make that a routine is so much more important and more beneficial to her brain health and her body health and her chemistry than to say, I accomplished a 20-day fast. Because she needs the brain health. She needs that neural pathway in the brain. She needs an emotional connection. The kid that did our roof work and gutters, he's cruising by. They're taking pictures to use it for advertising on the things. I see him cruising by. It's raining. He ain't getting out. But the gutters are on. But to know that all these things are happening and life is happening and you're getting through it, moving forward in all of this, this is where it all comes together. And all of you. I mean, it's just Gina needs to build the brain health and that neural pathway to keep things moving in the right direction. And that's so much more beneficial of knowing we're building the brain health than it is to just say, I white knuckled through 20 days of fasting.
I'm going to throw something else out there. I have not had any milk products of any kind since probably 2 weeks.
Nice.
And I miss it a little bit, but I feel a difference.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that, and I think that's why my ketones are so stable.
Yep.
You know, so anyways, just throw
Yes,
that out.
you're not alone in that, and I will tell you guys too, the heavy cream is my vice. It's the one thing I still hold on to, and it is the one thing that I am sure still affects my numbers and holds me back.
Yeah, I
So.
threw mine out.
Did you?
That was tough.
It is. It's like the last hug.
It's like throwing out a half gallon of ice cream, that's half eaten.
It's like sinful. It's just not good.
But I did it. I did it.
Yep. Oh,
So-
good. Good, good, good. All right. Symptoms of a concussion. I want to run through these real quick and then see how everybody's doing. The whole caveat of the symptoms of a concussion is that you bring together the days, the clumsy, vomiting, confusion, memory, losing your balance. What was some of the things? The smell, all those, it's swelling the brain. So when you look at the symptoms of a concussion, they're also the symptoms of a hangover. They are also the symptoms of a sugar and carb binge. So apply whatever you want to. Apply whatever, you got people that drink alcohol that will judge the people that smoke the marijuana. You got the marijuana people that will judge the people that eat the carbs and sugar. You got the carbs and sugar people that will judge everybody that does anything because carbs and sugar are legal and carbs and sugar are socially acceptable. So you have every version of judgment of addiction. And I think biggest thing I've learned in this is you don't judge anybody on an addiction. And that addiction does not matter if it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, or carbs and sugar. And I honestly think carbs and sugar are probably the worst because they are socially acceptable. Nobody, mind my language, but nobody give two shits when we drag our kids through the McDonald's drive-through. Nobody cares. Nobody says a word. But you let me put the post up of my grandson with 1.7 ketones and he's all excited holding his Keto Mojo up. You cannot believe the backlash I got for letting my grandson be in ketosis and, that feeding him like that and all those fats and all this. I mean, the backlash I got from one silly reel of my grandson being excited and in ketosis was insane to the point, it broke me of what the heck? I never expected the attack that I got from putting that public. It's socially acceptable. So it doesn't matter. I don't judge addiction anymore. No more than I want to be judged for being on 120 milligrams of Oxycontin for 18 years. It was forever for my brain. I had to learn how to do this to heal my brain from wanting 120 milligrams of Oxycontin every day of my life for 18 years. And I applaud, it's these teachings between Keto Continuum and the Brains course that there's a bottle of Oxycontin that's been sitting in my cabinet for 6 years that I've never touched, never wanted to touch. And there's almost, I can't say a pride in it at this point, but it's almost a bullheadedness in here of, I can honestly say it does not bother me. I don't want it. You would have to hold me down to ever put one back in me. It matters. The addictions matter. You've got to break the addictions in the brain. Put whatever name you want on it. Put sex, drugs, rock and roll, carbs, sugar, prescriptions, whatever you want to put on it. The addiction in the brain is still addiction in the brain. We can all judge the meth addict under the bridge, but I was no different. The addiction in my brain is no different. The addiction in Nancy wanting the snacks and the fun stuff that she had at the beginning, we're all the same in it. It's addiction in the brain. What are you using to cope? I'm using the bowl of fruit and pebbles on my couch to cope, just as the meth addict is looking to the meth to help him through a part of life that he can't handle. To the marijuana person that just needs a little bit of weed at night to go to relax and go to bed. To the person that just wants to sit at night and have a relax and just have a nice stiff drink to knock him out and put him to sleep, calm him down. It's addictions in the brain. It is your coping skill. What are you using and turning to cope with life? That is why this has to be a lifestyle. This has to be what we do, how we relate to people, but it also gives us the grace to look at the person struggling with the love for my daughter. There's nobody on this earth that loves my daughter more than I do. It breaks my heart to see her have a drink every night. But I understand why. Now I understand of that was her fun and dopamine when she stopped dancing and stopped touring and stopped doing all the fun stuff that she did that gave her the dopamine. She turned to alcohol. Didn't know any different. Didn't think a casual drink was that big of a deal. Well, it's not casual anymore. You know, I didn't think a prescription of Oxycontin getting handed to me every month. I'm taking it as the doctor said. I never snorted it, never crushed it, never took too many, never got to the end of the month and said, oh my God, I'm 10 pills short or something like that. Never. But my body was still just as addicted. We'd be sitting at the table and Lance would look at me and he's like, it's time for your pill, ain't it? My eyes would turn blood red. I would get bloodshot. My eyes would get watery. I would get cold, clammy, sweaty. I would start withdrawing an hour before my pill was due. So I spent 2 hours. I spent the hour before and the hour after I took it. I took it noon and 6, noon and 6. So from 11 to 1 every day, my whole schedule revolved around it. 11 to 1, I had to curl up in a ball, let that oxy get in me, and then I could function again for a couple hours. 9 and 3, 9 and 3 was my Dilaudid for the breakthrough pain. So I would make it. Nancy knows what these drugs are, so it's like they're awful. So I got a gap from 1 o'clock to about 2:30 to function, and then I was sick again at 3, and then I had a little gap from like 4 to 5 before the Oxycontin withdrawal started to kick back in. That I got like an hour to maybe an hour and a half gap throughout the day, every quarter of the day, to try to function. Then I'm functioning on Oxycontin and Dilaudid. So how well do you think I functioned? I was a mess, but that's what and I never abused it. That's exactly how they told me to do it. My body was still just as addicted. My brain was still just as addicted. So that is my heart and passion on addiction that is why all these things matter. That is why doing the sex, drugs, rock and roll, the meth, the alcohol, the marijuana, whatever term you want to put on it, carbs and sugar and coping skills all come into play the same way. They're all the same effect. We got to do the same work. It's that diligent. We cannot be the alcoholic and hang out in a bar every day. You cannot be the drug addict hanging out at the meth house every day. You can't be the carnivore person and sit with donuts on my table every day. You know, you got to change your lifestyle. You got to fix the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on it. I will go over. These donuts won't bother me today. I will probably even take a bite of this donut just to smile at my brother and say, you jerk. You know, I could have helped you. You could be alive. You know, I get mad at him. But I'm not going to go over there and eat a box of donuts. I'm going to go cry through my brother's house of shit and do the best I can do. But it's not going to, that box of donuts is not going to fix me today. It's just going to be hard and I'm going to have to suck it up and we're going to move on. But it's not going to be fixed in a box of donuts. And I'm okay with that. So apply whatever terminology you need to, apply whatever vice you need to, but it's all the same. So, all right, where are we on time? Is everybody good? Do you want to go on or do you want to tap out for the day? Everybody jump in. Come on. Do you want to do another module? Let me see what the next one is. Hang on.
Gina's nodding her head. What does that mean, Gina? No one's saying anything.
Right?
I'm usually the only one that speaks up, so I'm keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah, I know. Trying to find my unmute button.
Okay,
I
you
could
got it.
go. I could go maybe 45 minutes, but I've got to get back to work. So
Hang
by
on, let me
1
see how
maybe? I mean, it
long.
would depend. Yeah, see how long it is, and
The sad part is this one's alcohol in the brain. So this is hang on. Try to get.
I mean, I'm flexible. I can do whatever.
I can go until 1, and if we're not over,
My-
I just have to.
My first choice is
yeah,
to
go-
quit.
yeah.
I'm doing, can y'all
Yeah.
hear me?
Yep.
Can y'all hear?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. I can hear you.
I just changed, okay. Y'all couldn't hear me earlier, so,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
changed my mic. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, module 7 is alcohol in the brain, so it is a pretty good one. But it's a half hour long. Do you want to keep going or do you want to stop?
I'm good, but it's, yeah, whatever the group wants.
Gina, are you good? Good as
I
in good to
I
keep
can
going?
Yep, but about 1 o'clock, I'll have to kind of jump out if that's okay.
Okay,
But
Nancy,
it's only
you good for a
1:15.
half? You
12,
got,
so.
I'm good. I'm good.
all right,
I'm
let's do
good.
another half hour, then
Okay.
we'll kick it out, okay? All right.
Okay, I'm gonna go quickly and get a.
Yep, anybody need to
Bathroom
go
break.
pee or get a drink, I'll get this up and ready. Want to take pictures of her gutters and stuff for the advertising for the company, and I'm like, it is still storming here. We are like monsoon season. I've never, never seen it raining so bad.
We are in such a drought and,
Oh,
I mean, like my mom's pond is just dry and we're in stage 4 water restrictions. We can't even
Oh.
water our plants. So all our
Oh.
plants are dying. We
God,
can't
I wish
water
I
our
could send it
grass.
to. I could mail you some.
I wish you could too, but it's actually, it actually sprinkled a little bit last night.
Where do you live, Rose?
Corpus Christi, Texas, South Texas, right on the edge of the Chihuahuan Desert. Yeah.
Oh, Corpus Christi. Now, isn't that where Selena's from?
It is. And so we're on the ocean. So you would think we would get a lot of rain, but we don't.
Well, just know Selena is one of my daughters. Oh my gosh, my girls think they're reincarnated by Selena. My granddaughter didn't learn Spanish by taking Spanish classes. She learned Spanish because she can sing Selena songs. It's hilarious. Do you even know what you're singing? She's like, no, but I can do it. She does. It's funny. All right, everybody ready to go? Let's get this one done. Half hour. Let's
Yep.
see you guys.
Okay.
Hang on. There we go. Alcohol in the brain. This one's rude awakening. This one. This
So I'd
one's
like to point out a
Saturday.
few things, especially to the teachers and coaches in this room. These scratch-off things I really am excited about. Again, this is what we use in medical school to make sure that we can say that the students graduating from our classes have learned how to collaborate. By this point, we're at like question 6, you've really figured out that there are some people in your group that know more than others. That usually doesn't come across in the personalities that happen with people like me. Confident, go-getters. On my wedding cake, they didn't put a bride, they put a little bulldozer. And my other goes, my mother said, oh my goodness, he knows who he's marrying. I'm one of those extroverts that shows up to a room, and if there is any vacuum in leadership, I'll step in. Whether or not I'm qualified, nope, I will step in and I will lead. And it is in these groups like this where the introvert in the room can be drowned by people like me. I will give my opinion, I can convince you about anything, and I'm very articulate. But I'm not always right. And so these are called immediate feedback for a reason. What happens is when boisterous people like me need feedback immediately to say, shut up, listen. But it's also a place where a group dynamics should recognize, hey, he is quiet, and we'd call that an introvert maybe, but they're very knowledgeable. Bringing their skill set to this team is actually going to help our city do better. And that's what these little scratch-offs will teach. I am profoundly impressed when I get a dynamic group of extroverts and introverts working together. I am careful to not put all the introverts together or the extroverts together. By the end of a 10-question process, the introverts have a voice. And it's usually because of the pain of what those extroverts will dynamically lead them right over the cliff to do. So keep paying attention to your quiet ones. I hope that is also coming across. So I would like you guys all to use your imagination. Because I'm sure this wonderful, very mature audience has never had this happen and is gonna have to use like the experience of maybe movies or fables to answer this. I'd like you to holler out what it feels like to be drunk or have a hangover. Go. Headache. Double vision. Speech impairment. Sensitivity to light. How about sound and smell? Okay. Nausea. Throwing up. Blackouts. Absolutely. Tired. Emotional. Slurred speech. I got that one there. Confusion. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Why? Why does a concussion have the exact same symptoms as alcohol or being hungover? That is the number one answer. The answer is swelling. Swelling. Which brings us to this multi-question over here. So in case the coaches in the room missed that, it is a fascinating social experiment for you to do this with your team. They're gonna know exactly what a concussion does. They've been trained, they've been quizzed, everybody's been quizzed, they've over-educated concussions. I'm glad for it, don't get me wrong. It's much easier to convince the coach from that football not to play with this because of the education that's come around concussions. Dr. Amen, who is the source files from several of these scans, donated the information and the scans for hundreds of NFL players to show them what does chronic concussions look like in a brain. And that information is pervasive. I don't have to educate that. I don't come to auditoriums like this with hungry audiences saying, tell me about concussions. But the parallel for what's happening inside a brain for some of the chemicals, let's start with alcohol. It's shocking to me that they don't know this. Let's start with question one. When you look at alcohol, in my high school, I grew up in a town of 2,000 people. K through 12 is in one building. You start kindergarten with 21 kids. You graduate 13 years later with 21 kids. You're like a family. But in science class, we didn't have the best budget, so somewhere along the line, that whole experiment where you put 2 solutions of water, then you put like vinegar on one, and then the membrane pulls the water over to the higher salinity side. Yeah, we just watched a video on that. But that science experiment.
Hey guys, I just want to tell you too, when you're talking about, she's talking about the swelling. So listen to what she's talking about, the intercellular following of the fluids. Gina, this kind of touches on what we were talking about with the fluid for the saline in the water and everything that she's talking about. That's part of that transition of when you're holding fluids and you're holding the swelling and you have the edema. That is where the electrolytes and the salt and stuff comes into play. So kind of listen to what she's talking about alcohol right now, but it kind of all ties together. So keep that in mind.
Experiment is could be used with alcohol. In alcohol, for every 1 molecule of alcohol, it'll pull about 4 molecules of water with it. So the next day when you wake up from alcohol, you've had some alcohol, you can't quite get your ring off, and like your hand is a little puffy, and like everything's swollen, and your tongue's even swollen. Like, how are all those things swollen? Well, the alcohol went there. And with the alcohol, it pulled the fluid. When you have a hangover, people will tell you to do what to get over the hangover? Drink water. Where'd all the water go? Yeah, you did not pee it out. It's intracellular with the alcohol. So the water goes out of the blood vessels and into those blood cells, And it doesn't care what cell it is. As long as the alcohol goes there, so does the fluid. So does alcohol get into your brain? Oh, right, that's why we use it. Doc, when I drink alcohol, I'm just so much more social. You know what? I am such a better person when I drink. I relax. I can talk to women. Why? Oh, wait, because your brain's swollen and you're not really thinking through things about all the dangerous, stupid things you're about to do. And the vulnerability you're giving that woman over you is a little bit, good luck. So it takes courage and bravery to get off over those moments, and alcohol surely will help you with that because your brain's swollen and your neurons are not firing as fast. Perfect. I'm glad you got through the first date. Now the second date. Now it takes 3 drinks of alcohol. Now when you don't have it, you don't act right. And instead of enhancing the skills that we wanted you to do, like learning how to talk to girls, you didn't develop that one because it was swollen, so the neuron never really actually developed. And when we talk about emotional maturity being blunted, take a minute to scan your lives and say, have you ever met that guy who is 50? And if you look back at his life, when he was in his 20s, he started dating this, super cute girl, and they had a great relationship. And then about the age of like 32, he found another 20-year-old. And then about the age of 42, he found another 20-year-old. And now he's 52 and he's got another 20-year-old. Well, why does that not just happen once in the universe? Like, why does it happen actually a lot? Maybe because attraction between a man and a woman is based on maturity. And his maturity is blunted. Oh, wait, he started drinking around 15? So he kind of acts like a 15-year-old. And you can see that in his choices. And society had a lot of forgiveness for him when he was 20. But then we said, man up, dude. How many times are you going to date a 20-year-old woman and see it's not going to work out? Especially if you're dating a woman whose brain is going to continue to mature. And as soon as she outmatures you, the attraction will be gone. Unless she's over-disciplined and finds a way to pray through it, but it's not a match made in heaven for sure. That maturity needs to get back on board. And when you swell their brain and their hippocampus stops maturing because it had alcohol in it, and then, wait a minute, how long does that brain not mature? 6 months. Now they can record memory. Yeah, they'll remember things. But if you want the maturation, that part about where the brain actually fires, I'll do this first. This is the punchline. Drunk, hungover. Easy to teach. A 17 years of alcohol misuse. A lot of brain missing. So you look at that man who's continued to use alcohol as part of his, it's only a few beers. I'm from South Dakota. Every farmer does that at 5 o'clock. It's just a few beers. Until something in their life hits a critical mass, and then it's like the only coping skill left was in a bottle. And the good news is, if that farmer does want to figure out how to cope in another way, as long as his brain's not swollen, we can work on that. But if he keeps swelling his brain, and now he's 52, he has sleep apnea, he has fat, he's got a big tummy, he doesn't work out, he chases women that are really slow, so he doesn't need that. But if you did get sober for a year, look at how much of that brain we could wake up.
Take a picture of that one if you want to. That's another good one. 1 year. Look how much gray matter has filled in on that. I mean, that's just, I don't know. I think that's what a neat, grace be to God that our brains can heal back from that.
Exciting.
It is. All right, keep going. Sorry.
And that's not a spring chicken. They have been around a while. So let's go to that dopamine part of the question. So if you've taken a neuroscience class and you hear about alcohol, you're going to hear that alcohol is a depressant. It slows down your brain. It makes it easier for you to do things like talk to girls and change the way your speech pattern is nice and not so nervous. It's slower, but it's in a way that stops the healing of whatever nerve you're affecting. But in those questions, I said, wait a minute, dopamine, well, what other things do you know about dopamine? What in life is linked to dopamine? Can you think of anything? Drugs, yes, lots of drugs. They get euphoric. They feel so good. What other ways outside of drugs can you feel that good? Sex. Yes, absolutely. Procreation is highly linked to dopamine. This is not an accident that our teenagers like this, that we like this. A runner's high is actually dopamine. And when you use dopamine in the form of alcohol, it does surge. You get this burst of energy. Now, if you look long term at what alcohol is binding to, it is in that realm of what the benzodiazepines are. It's going to calm you down, be anti-anxiety. They're not really dopamine receptors that it's binding to, but the use of alcohol still has a dopamine surge to it. That's what gets them giddy those first few times they drink. Man, they've never had this experience before. A whole bunch of dopamine comes out, released, and they fight that. They want that again and again. And what's happening on a cellular level, because it is important, is that these little vacuoles come to the end of a neuron. A nerve comes and it's got these little bubbles, and it's full of dopamine. And the alcohol swells the nerve, and bloop, a bunch of it goes out. So they get all giddy and feel excited. And what the dopamine does is it binds to the next little nerve, fits in these little receptors, and it sends a message. And so you do that again and again. If you have a healthy, not inflamed brain, you'll keep making dopamine. And so those little vacuoles will stay replenished. So if you get that little giddy feeling like 4 times a year from the alcohol, okay, the swelling's probably not such a bad thing. You're going to figure it out. But if you're trying to find that dopamine hit every day or 4 or 5 times a week, there's not time to fill up those vacuoles again with a really fresh batch of dopamine. And the longer they drink, the less their dopamine becomes a part of their brain chemistry. That when you look at the 4 areas of where dopamine can come from in our brain, this is kind of sciencey, but I really like covering this because it isn't long before people say, well, why don't you just make dopamine? In fact, there was a group of teenagers who played with this like in the 70s or something, and you can Google it. Maybe it was in the 1980s, where they made a drug that acted just like dopamine, and they took it, and they burned out all their dopamine receptors in their brain. Does anybody remember this story? What the kids had? They chemically induced them to have Parkinson's. Yes. It is actually where a ton of research has come from to say they took that messy chemical that these teenagers made and did a little bit of cleanup, but use it now to wipe out the dopamine receptors in mice and other animals to say, let's study if they don't have any dopamine receptors, how these other medications can help my Parkinson's patients. So thank you for frying your brains, but when you chase just dopamine, sounds like a good idea, but there's a problem. The chemical pathways can be in their limbic area, and that's the pleasure part, the sex, drugs, the pleasure. There's a sex one too, actually, completely different set of pathways that are related to what happens when you have an orgasm. If you've got extrapyramidal, these are the parts of in Parkinson's that dopamine doesn't match, and they end up with a tremor. Their muscles are moving when their brain's not telling it to. That's completely a dopamine pathway that's being affected there. And then finally, your mood, the depression and fear and anxiety, they're actually related to dopamine. And when there's too much dopamine or not enough, or pockets of dopamine and not in other areas, we get some really weird things that happen to humans. Like they get paranoid. They start seeing things that aren't really there. And it isn't fun. Like extra dopamine in all the wrong places turns into scary stuff. They're like the devil's out to get me. I've got a paranoia. And that's related to dopamine. If you've ever studied chronic alcoholism, in the way their brain has all those holes that one did, they're like, they think goofy things. They didn't used to be this way. The alcohol's not affecting me though. I have anxiety. I have depression. No kidding, you got half of your brain missing. Other increased negative symptoms where they just can't feel happy. And if you study chronic alcoholism, yes, depression, alcohol is a depressant, and this is part of where they get that they just deplete the dopamine from other areas of their brain. We're going to talk about this same process in other drugs in just a minute, but I think there is more alcoholism in our country than any other problem, as much as the marijuana and methamphetamine and heroin and opiates are a huge part of our culture. Alcohol still wins. And alcohol depletion is, or what alcohol depletes in that brain is the supply of dopamine. So blunted dopamine release increases the vulnerability to other substances. So I am thankful that the alcohol education is much better than it used to be. Kids are at least more aware that alcohol has some consequences, just like concussions. People with alcohol use disorder have decreased dopamine receptors in their areas of the brain. Again, just another part that says it gets overtaught that alcohol is a depressant, and they forget that the depression, the anxiety, the poorly functioning brain that comes from the chronic use of a drug that repeatedly swells your brain, very easy to see, very easy to measure in autopsy. Oh wait, those depression symptoms that happen in the chronic concussions, you know, the ones from the NFL, same pathology in their brains. Why? Because you kept swelling it over and over again. But doc, you know, I just feel better when you put this in me. It must be natural. Man, I've heard that before. Chronic brain swelling. In case you missed it, here's the punchline. Low BDNF, less brain flexibility, and halted brain repair. That 52-year-old dating the 20-year-old, he doesn't need to live 30 years to make this problem up. He does need to recognize where the problem is, though, and that is that the maturation of his brain was severely blunted because he never went more than 6 months without that alcohol. And 6 months is where the maturation gets to start again. So when I go to these teenage kids and say, hey, your hippocampus is better than mine, because if I go out tonight and get blitzed, my hippocampus is going to have some swelling, and I'm going to damage it. But if you do that, you actually, in 6 months, get to regrow it. I don't get to do that. I get to repair it, and yes, I can add a few cells to my hippocampus. It does have that progenitor stem cell effect still, but nothing like what you see in a teenager. If you look at a 15-year-old teenager, and this is similar to a SPECT scan. It's not a SPECT scan, but it is looking at the function in their brain. And this is a 15-year-old non-drinker who's taking a test. This one is a 15-year-old heavy drinker, and they're not drunk. He only drinks on the weekends, and the test was taken on a Wednesday. So he's not drunk and he's not exactly hungover. He can't wait for the weekend. But what's powerful in this image is to say when that teenage brain stops growing and maturing, they can't tap into it. So when they're having emotional lability and you're trying to scream, holler, shame them into better behavior, just take a second to remember the cells in their brain are swollen. And no words you say are really going to make much difference, but taking them by the hand, taking them by the life, and saying, let's walk together by doing a few things that are going to improve you. How about we jump rope for a minute? And although they'll think you're crazy, and they'll probably be way better at it than you because their brain is more flexible, that actually has some evidence to say you're going to do some improvements. That when I study Alzheimer's, if I look at their brain function while taking a test, again, this is a normal adult. This is that of an Alzheimer's brain. Look at the comparison to the 15-year-old who wasn't drinking on a Wednesday when we scanned him, but does drink on the weekends and swells his brain's cells most weekends of the year. his brain does not work as well as my Alzheimer's patient. When I look at the people that should hear this message, it's not an accident that my teenage boys have had to come help mom. You've got to advance the slides for me. Okay, you got to have a purpose, whatever, do what you need to do. Because my teenagers, I know when they're in the moment of saying, but I don't think you have all the facts straight, and they text me and they ask for a couple of pictures. This is one of the pictures they asked for. This is a picture of what happens to the maturation curve in a brain from 0, 5 years old essentially, to 20. And the more blue it is, the more the brain neuron is functioning in a mature cycle. And I've tried many ways to express how powerful it is that the places that teenage brain matures is absolutely related to how swollen their brain is, and they only get this section of life to do it. So when you ask the group of teenagers who wants to be the most resilient in the room, they'll look at you like, what the heck are you talking about? But when you start to say, who wants to be the most successful? Who wants to be the one in this room who does outsmart and outnavigate the obstacles of life that every single one of us is going to run into? It's related to the way your neurons are developing right now. And whatever mistake you've made, God bless you, you have the forgiveness of being a teenager. Your brain has the ability to rewire this before you're 26. We want the mothers in the room to step up and say, here's bedtime, remove electronics, and the dads in the room to say, here, let me be a strong leader present in your life. And those processes are not an accident. They are very much linked to who has the highest suicide rates? The ones where there is a fatherless family. The ones where the resources are low and there's an absence of faith in their family. And you study cultures across the globe. It's not just America. So you know that swollen brain that I was telling you about? How when a brain has alcohol exposed to it, it swells 4 to 1. You know all these symptoms that I put up on the board? Can you die of alcohol? What's that called? Alcohol poisoning. What is that? In the liver, isn't it? Someone said in the liver, isn't it? Alcohol hepatitis or alcohol liver disease is from chronic alcoholism. So someone else just said that there's something about water related to it. So if you put alcohol poisoning isn't a chronic disease though, is it? It's something teenagers usually do, and they drink a whole bunch of alcohol, and the alcohol goes in, and then it does exactly what every chemical does, which is scripted. You don't get to negotiate at this point. It goes into those cells, and it pulls in water. And just like my ICU, where I could check off to see what things were happening and how close are we to pinching the back of that nerve to shut off the breathing, we now swell the brain, swell the brain, swell the brain. And instead of being in my ICU with a calculation to say, let's cut off part of that skull and let them swell upwards, they're on like a fraternity floor or a couch in a house that nobody's watching. And they froth and they can't breathe and they pinch off the nerve that is controlling their breathing, and they die. Alcohol poisoning is an acute, a rapid infusion of alcohol and a brain swelling associated with it that pinches off the back of the nerve, the same as what happens when a concussion swells too fast and pinches off the back of that nerve. And driving home that punchline for the coaches in the room, I have a goal that this year, 100 coaches hear this little teachable moment. And they take their whiteboards and they start with concussions and they move to alcohol and they end with alcohol poisoning because it's completely preventable. The rapid infusion of alcohol, the swelling of a brain, not only do they not mature their brain for 6 months, but for heaven's sakes, let's get them through the next 12 hours without shutting off their breathing. So this is my favorite picture in the whole thing because This picture was taken in a brain where we had teenagers, and this teenage female took a shot of tagged tequila to get the picture. 22 minutes before this was taken. So 20 minutes prior to this, her brain wasn't swollen. But that shot of tequila just perfused through every one of the dividing cells of her brain, and it swelled it. And how long is her brain going to stop maturing? 6 months, right? What happens if this was part of what she was carrying too? Next question.
I love that one. I geek out on these a little bit. So I think there's so many teaching moments in all of it that we can apply to each person. Let's run down through 7.1, the questions first. Alcohol dehydrates our bodies by pulling fluid from circulation inside the cells. Wherever alcohol goes, the fluid follows. True or false?
True.
Yes.
True. Very good. Alcohol swells the brain. The swelling lasts up to 3 days. The halted brain development lasts up to 6 months. True or false?
I think it's true.
True. Alcohol causes euphoria through surge in dopamine. Chronic use of alcohol depletes the dopamine and dopamine stored in the brain. True or false?
True.
True. The hippocampus of a teenager who drinks alcohol has been shown to be 50% smaller than a non-drinker. True or false?
False.
Yeah, that's false. Chronic alcoholics crave alcohol when their dopamine receptors have no dopamine for too long. The receptors are hungry for dopamine. True or false?
Probably true.
That's true. That is where cravings come from, whether that's addictions and the
Sugar.
cravings of carbs and sugar, alcohol, drugs, withdrawal from medications, whatever. That is where our body is looking for that dopamine. So do you see where the dopamine, the coping skill, and your people want to say, oh, it's just a diet. It's not just a diet. It's how do we cope? How do we teach our brain to deal with the food as an addiction? So the keto continuum, the reason we're still fighting and I still want the cream in my coffee and I still want the fruity pebbles when I'm stressed is because my body will still want to go back to the addiction and the dopamine that used to give me. It doesn't give me the dopamine anymore. So the birthday, when Nancy's saying her birthday's coming up and she doesn't have the desire for a cake, she's not looking for dopamine from a birthday cake anymore. That's a win. That sounds like no big deal, but that is huge because how many of us grew up knowing that your birthday, you got your birthday cake and that was the aha moment of the day? Those things change one at a time. We went out to dinner last night. I used to think when we go out to dinner, you have a drink. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Oh,
Bless you.
thank you. It's coming. It's going to come when I least expect it. When you go out and you have that drink, and you think it's no big deal, it's like, yes, it is. Yes, it is a big deal. I'm looking for that dopamine. I don't need dopamine. I don't need an outside source to give me dopamine. We need dopamine from healthy things, from Bible study, from relationships, from, go have some sex, whatever, those healthy dopamines that we're given. Lance loves it when I use that one for a punchline. Because it's funny. I'm like, he's like, you need dopamine, don't you? I'm like, shut up. But you can find healthy dopamines, and that is where we go for the walk and enjoy the nature, and not just having exercise be oh, I don't like to exercise. Okay, well then go for a walk through the prettiest park in your neighborhood. Go enjoy something. Go for the boat ride, go for the walk around the park, go for something that's going to give you dopamine. Just give it something that's healthy to give you the dopamine, not something that's going to take you down the wrong path, because that dopamine is a complete direct effect of the brain health, which is a complete direct effect of your lifestyle, of your emotional health, and your coping skills. It all starts to tie together when you get this going in the right direction. And that's the beauty of it. Symptoms, we've went through these. I think you guys are getting the punchline here of the symptoms of a hangover or being drunk are the same symptoms of a concussion. It is the woozy, the throwing up, the blurry vision, the all those, and it's the same because the common denominator is a swelled brain. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, carbs and sugar, swelled brain, period. I mean, it's all the same. The neural pathway where she goes into, those go a little too medical for us to even worry about. We don't need to know the names of them. Just know the different pathways in there, the different dopamine receptors are for different areas. So, sex is in one, healthy habits are in another, something that makes you feel good, having love and relationship, from oxytocin, that's another. All those things start to play into effect, but you can play on each of those. But if we just look for dopamine all the time, that is where the crazy comes in. You can't just look for the high all the time. Learning to flex, just like we flex in and out of ketosis, and we want to learn to do that emotionally, we need to be able to do the same thing too. We need to be able to flex in and flex out and calm back down. That autonomic nervous system needs to fire up and then it needs to be able to shut down. We don't want to be in fight or flight all the time. That's where the problem comes in. So learning to navigate all of these systems and then working together is the goal. Again, go back to the way God made our body to function. We're not meant to be in fight or flight 24 hours a day. We're meant to be able to run and save our lives and get out of it. But then the calm down is hard for some of us because most of us that live on that high adrenaline rush all the time, learning to calm down is the hard part. That's my heart problem. I can get my heart rate up there and go. I struggle recovering. I struggle getting my heart rate to come back down because I am such an anxious person and I didn't learn good coping skills growing up. It's stay ahead of the emotion and I can do that. But when I have to deal with life and learn a healthy coping skill, I struggle. So it's being purposeful. Chronic brain swelling is yes, low BDNF, brain flexibility, and halted brain repair. So just having those things all, and alcohol poisoning again by suffocation because it tightens off that.
Alcohol poisoning. I am amazed that teenagers do such damage. I mean, not just teenagers, but the majority.
Right.
Day after day after day after day after day. I mean, can they literally drink, which they do. A lot of that age group in our landscape division, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and then just, I don't know, get married and stop drinking, and 6 months later their brain heals from all that damage.
But I think
all
the sad
that
part is
swelling?
I'm saying, because like I said, we live in a small town and we were the Kool-Aid house that all the kids hung out at. And the sad part of it
Yeah.
is watching that group of kids that they weren't crazy partiers through the teenage years. They weren't horrible kids. They were for the most part, decent kids, decent little community. And watching how many of them though now as young adults, like my daughter, 30, 40 years old, it is now the only coping skill they have. It is what they turn to for so many things. It's heartbreaking. And it's more than not, it's, that it's like, what the hell did we do wrong? I know the group of us parents are sitting back going, we went through that phase in the teenage years and it was over. I didn't because I had a baby on my hip, but the majority of my classmates went through it in our little community. But then you go get a job, you work on the farm, you're doing stuff that we don't get to party every day of the week and do that. That generation or our kids' generation now is really struggling with, you watch the coping skills of, damn.
For me, this is so depressing because, my mom was an alcoholic and I got out of the house, and I guess my coping skill was to go drink with my friends instead of watching her drink. And I went and I drank every night, and she was blasted, and my dad went to bed, and so I came home whenever I wanted to,
Yeah.
and I got up, and I used to tell everybody for years I had chronic fatigue syndrome since I was 15 years old. But now in retrospect, I didn't. And it makes me want to cry because what have I done? And that's why I can't. I have the brain somehow. I keep getting promoted into management. I was a benefits manager for the city of Corpus Christi. It's a very high profile, very high stress job, very political, lots of unions, and I couldn't hack it. Emotionally, I can't hack it. And I had to take a demotion, and then I tried another promotion to another managerial job, and I couldn't hack it. So I had to take another $30,000 demotion to another accounting job. And so that's where I am. And I've lived out my life in this, you know, being so much less financially and all just I've paid this price, and I am sentenced to this for the rest of my life.
But
Anyway,
Rose,
it's depressing.
it is, but to think of how you can turn it around now and
Yeah.
maybe still go reach for those goals and be whatever you damn well want to be, because you can turn that around. And I'm telling you, I've made huge changes in my cognitive thinking in 5 years. So that may not sound, that sounds like a long time, but I'm telling you, it can be done. And I half-ass it sometimes. So it's one of those, get in there.
But I'm 62 now. I'm
That's okay.
62. I mean,
But-
really, what am I going to do?
Hey, you've got a good 40 years ahead of you. So let's aim big, but you're going to get your jump rope out. You're going to get your left hand loops out. You're going to stay in ketosis. You're going to do all these things, and watch how fast it turns around. Watch how much of a change you can do. Don't beat yourself up for what you can't change. Take the blessing of you are continually growing new cells every day. Let's make tomorrow's cells as healthy as they can damn well possibly be, and you be the best you that you can be. And Rose, I applaud you for recognizing that. I really do. And, we'll be praying for you, and know that that's why we don't half-ass this. That's why sometimes I am tough on everybody, that it's like, because those of us that really want to change, we don't get to half-ass it. We don't get to do it when it feels good and it's easy. It sucks sometimes. And it's, there is no frou-frou fun carnivore lifestyle that we say, woo, we're carnivore and we're this and we're that. No, sometimes carnivore sucks because I want something more than just a damn piece of meat on my plate. Sometimes I just want something to enjoy. But food has such a direct effect on the alcohol, the drugs, the brain, everything you're doing is how are we fueling our body? And you have to fuel your body on those healthy fats to get the brain health to get where you want to be. And you can do this,
Yeah.
Rose. You got to try backing
Wait,
in.
Rose, I want to interrupt, but let me jump in, Rose, too, just on a couple things. First was just that, first of all, let this group, all of us, support you, and listen to everything, because I'm listening to everything that Tammy's saying, because I'm 58, going to be 59, and I need my brain, because our generation's going to have to take care of ourselves. I'm afraid the 20-year-old that's, at the, a nursing home, it's going to accidentally kill us, because they can't, they're watching TikTok and they didn't give us the right drugs, right? But the other thing I want to say, Rose, is as an employer with 180, so quite a few employees, I want to make the point to anybody that's our age and a little older, is that as an employer, I struggled over 10 years to get the right people in the office. And in order to do that, I had to hire our age group, because we hired some 20s and 30s. And oh my God, if I had to go down through the list of, I just wanted to
I've
shoot
managed
myself,
them.
not to mention them in the head, right? Yeah, so you've managed them. But I don't want you to discount depending on what you want to do in your life, even if it's part-time or anything, I don't want to discount. Like, if you listen to Tammy, like I want to listen to Tammy, and do the work to get the ketones, because I notice how my brain works so much better when I'm in ketosis or fasting. Oops. But anyway, so if we can do that, I just want you to know that as the other people that aren't doing it in our life, and that's sadly so, you're going to be the person that some employer wants, even if it's just part-time or something that you want to do for your life that you enjoy, not a high-stress, maybe corporate job. You're going to be of value. If you continue this, like I'm going to continue 50, 60, 70, you're going to be the cream of the crop. Does that make sense? So you may have felt like in the last, I don't know, maybe 5, 10, 15 years that, you just weren't able to get to that higher level job. Well, now, as we get older, the group that we have are slowly not eating right and getting worse and worse and worse. So as you do, you are going to end up being that person, so it might be, by God's grace and just connecting you with Tammy, that the time for you now is to go, well, maybe life will be better. Maybe this point in my life, I can make this physiological change. And, my circumstances, will be better, that I haven't seen in the last 10. So I don't know if that makes sense, but just from an employer's perspective, I'll be like, oh, I'd hire you in a second.
I think,
Well,
what?
thank you.
Integrity,
Yep.
the work ethic, the everything. So if we can do our part and keep our brains functioning throughout these next 20 years, I know there are employers out there like me that would be like, oh, thank God, a reasonable person.
Yep.
That,
I think there is
so.
something
Anyway, I
huge
just
to
wanted
be,
to,
huge to be said
Yeah.
on our generation of work ethic and that generation coming up behind us
Mhm.
that I'm like, oh,
mhm.
I mean, my granddaughters, I don't want to start at 11. What do you mean don't want to start at 11? Kind of thing. Just the whole common sense is not common enough. Practicality is not practical enough. Like, come on, get off your butt and do some work and don't be afraid of a day's work. And I think it's our generations that are able to do that because those ones coming up, I think just what Gina's saying,
Yeah.
as the
It's scary.
employer
That's
view
just
us.
sad.
Yeah, it's sad.
Scary.
So,
Yeah.
come on,
Rose,
what's
So
up,
let us
Nance?
all just
Ro-
support you. Yeah. hmm
Rose, I'm gonna be 66. I feel like my life is just starting.
Yep.
And you're right where you're supposed to be. And you
Yep.
know what? Those high stress jobs, they do so much damage to you, whether you're a little bit healthier or not. I am so grateful to be out of high stress. I was in nursing. I'm so grateful not to have that stress. But you know what the other thing is? Your job does not define who you are. Your
Amen.
finances do not define who you are.
Amen. Yep.
That's true.
Your house, it's really who God says who you are.
Yep.
And you're a child of God, you belong to him. That's what's valuable. Your ethics, that's what makes you,
Integrity.
the word, but your integrity, that's the word I wanted. Your integrity, your authenticity that you're showing us now, that's what makes you valuable.
Yep.
Really,
That's true. And I'm out to prove something because I was never enough for my
Yeah.
parents. Yeah.
Yeah,
How many of us all have that feeling of never being
Right.
enough?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in
So,
a great place, Rose. You're
thank
in a
you.
great place.
You are. God is good. And I think, again, there is no accident. Lance and I, as we grow this little business, there's no accident. We keep praying for God to bring the people that truly have the heart and soul of what we're trying to grow in a business. And Rose, you fit right in that. There's no accident of who we're here trying to support each other. You got Gina that's getting ready to do some of the biggest business deals a person can do. You got Nancy that's going through life, she's been there, done that. And you're right in there with us of what we're supposed to be here doing this.
You have our phone numbers.
Yep. And that is where
Thank you, ladies.
we are a tribe and a family. And please get in the group, get over there. And that is where we are a sisterhood here that I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't know much blood family that can be any stronger than the sisterhood we have growing here. And God is good and bringing us together, and he's bringing the right people together to help you. So
Thank you.
we got this. Any questions on set? Hey, wait, one more thing I forgot in my notes. Does anybody know the guy that was 25 and married the 20-year-old and then got divorced and then married the 20-year-old and got divorced?
My husband, my ex-husband.
That was my answer too.
Aren't you glad you moved on?
Right? I mean, he's a good man, good person, but oh my God, he just wants to party. It's like, dude, did you not? I didn't even get to grow into that phase, but that passed at 17 years old when I had a baby, kind of thing. And I look at him now and he's 60 something years old. And to him, a good night is to still sit around drinking and partying with the kids. And I'm like, I love my girls, but I do not care to go party and drink. But so I just had to laugh at that one of who knows the guy that married and it's like, I married that man. But here's the sad part, and I'm not doing this to bash my ex-husband. I mean it out of love. He had a traumatic point when he was 17. He came home and found his daddy dead,
Mm.
and his daddy died, and he quit maturing. And I swear to God, we had been in counseling for 20 years together. And Dr. Barrett would look at him, he's like, Tim, you got to deal with life. He's never dealt with his dad dying. And he's still mad at the world. He's still ticked off, and the world owes him something because he lost his dad at 17, and a million little things and voices in his head. But the point in it is his brain stopped maturing. I swear to God, that moment, his reasoning skills, his emotional connection, all of that stopped at 17 years old. I mean, just stupid stuff. I would say, Tim, come on, can we go on a date? Go on a special night. Can we go out on a special date or something? Why does everything got to be special? I'm like, I don't know. I guess it don't, but not just here, supper on the table, or he'd take me to the finest restaurants. We've traveled the world. I mean, he would give me anything money could buy, but there was no emotional connection. He did not need a hug, a pat on the back. He didn't need an emotional connection for anything. And it's just sad because it breaks my heart for him because he is a good man, but he never got through that emotional thing at the beginning. I swear he is still 17 years old, stuck where the day his daddy died. And then you add the alcohol on top of it, of his coping skill after that, and before that probably. But it's where it just snowballs into, you see why he's like he is. I understand him better now to understand he turned to alcohol when he didn't know what to do with his dad, or the loss of his dad. So I don't know, just, it gives you grace. Even though I don't understand it, I don't agree with it. I wish he would change. It gives you grace for, man, that's just not there, but gives you grace, God's grace. Any questions on 7 that anything that I missed or didn't cover? I think I got all my, the highest suicide rate, no father, no faith, low resources, and no boundaries. That was interesting to me. So again, high suicide rate for children and kids with no father in the home, no faith in the home, low resources, and no boundaries. Our kids need boundaries. Our kids need resources. Our kids need a father present, and our kids need to have their butts in church. It's just, how many things that we failed at as a mother that I look at, it's like, God, I want to do over. Tim was around, but he worked 7 days a week, just let the kids stay up all night, let them watch games, play games, whatever. So lots of do-overs, but module 8 is going to be, hang on. Fetal alcohol syndrome. It's another one of, we'll probably be able to do 7 and 8, or 8 and 9 together. And maybe even 10. We may be able to finish up next time if you want to. Number 11 is the case study, and she lets you kind of go. I always let you guys decide if you want to do 11. 11 is when she teaches it live, she lets everybody go in and gives you a case study, and she lets you learn, how would you treat this patient? What would you do for this lady that has this horrific story that she shares with you? How would you treat her? And that's what the last module is. It's kind of a fun, just group one to talk through, and I kind of apply it in how do you best help somebody that is truly an addict, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. How would you truly help an addict? And I apply that to coaching for food, but it also ties into when you have that addict. Again, you're not going to take your best friend that is an alcoholic to the bar for the weekend for a fun night. You're just not going to do that. So part of the different ways of treating and helping is, how do you make it a lifestyle? How do you go celebrate after work without it being in a bar for your alcoholic friend? How do you go do these things that it doesn't have to revolve around their addiction? And it's learning to change the focus off the addiction to something in life that's positive, that matters, that builds health and builds a future. So, and it all comes back down to, you focus on him instead of everything else. If we look for him for the dopamine, Jesus is the way. I guess that's my punchline at the end of it.
Yeah. Amen. Yep.
We got this. Girls, I love y'all. We'll be back at it
Can I
next
ask you
week.
a quick question?
Yes.
Just before I forget, totally not related. In your neck of the woods, do you know a place called Put-in-Bay?
Yes. Been there.
Oh. Oh, okay. I'll catch up with you later, but okay.
Yeah. You coming to Put in Bay?
Yeah. Oh, no, long story. Yeah,
Okay.
nice place or no? Nice place?
I think it can be. We went again. I
Yeah.
wasn't much of the partier, so it's kind of a fun,
Yeah.
fun little
Oh, that's why, probably. Somebody
atmosphere.
mentioned
And
it,
I
yeah.
went with two
Yeah.
little kids
Yeah.
in tow, so it was one of those. Oh, don't know if I would do that again. Might be a fun night for
Yeah,
the girls.
yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be, hubby and date night or something.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
know that I would take my
yeah.
children back there again. That was one of
Yeah,
those
yeah, yeah,
moments of
That's probably why. Yeah.
probably one of the. I'll
Well,
give you.
speaking of your sister-in-law, oh, sorry. Just good. Pray for you this afternoon. So
Thank
you're gonna go over. So be okay with it.
Lance just texted. He said they got
Everybody.
the first load to the new house, so they got the hard one
Yeah,
over
okay.
with. So
Yeah.
the rest will be. We'll get her there. Oh, my goal is to
Oh,
get her sleeping at
thinking
the
of
new
you.
house tonight. So that's my
Yeah.
my goal. And my
Yeah.
nephew to get my
Yeah.
nephew. Here's how bad it is. My nephew, my son's son, or my brother's son, my nephew has been paying on his own apartment for a year and is still living at Michael's, not my brother's. So he's got that immature little thing that he needs to kick it. It's like, dude, you need to, you need to go. You need to move
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
So
yeah.
pray for Jake and pray for Kimmy, but we're
Yeah.
hoping is to get Kimmy over in the new apartment tonight. That's our goal, is to get her sleeping in her new beginnings tonight. So that'll be good.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you, because I know it's gonna be a tough afternoon.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I love you guys. I know this
Okay,
is a
love
lot
you
to
too.
digest and a lot of information overload, but I will tell you I truly love this course. I really do. And the more we hear it, the more we learn. I learn something new every time I listen to it. So it just ties in. It really does. So Rose will be praying for you, and you got this, girl.
Thank you.
Don't be on.
Bye.
All right, guys. I love y'all. Have a good night. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.